Let me know when you press the button. We'll start
I
talking
have.
about movies. Oh
I've
my
hit the
goodness.
button. The button's been hit. Let's talk about some movies, my dude.
Blank face in the chat calling us late. We are right on time. Thank you very much. I will not take that slander. Banned. Mods, ban them. Do we have any mods? We don't.
Wait,
But if
no.
we did, you'd
We
be
didn't. That's
banned.
not in the budget.
You lucked out this time.
Just wait till we get a budget in here.
I swear to God. Welcome, everyone. Hello. I hope everyone's having
Hello,
a
all.
wonderful Spooktober. Today, we're going to talk about some movies. So I suppose we'll start with why we're doing these streams in the first place. I was talking to Hugh, and I said, Hugh, what's your favorite horror movie of all time? What is it? And he said,
The Thing.
yes. And then mine is The Shining, as you might be able to tell from our icons. So we thought, you know what? Let's talk about something good this Halloween. Let's talk about some good movies. And then we both realized that both of our favorite horror movies of all time had belated sequels and prequels that neither the other had seen. So we thought, you know what? Let's talk about those as well. Why not? Get a little bit of bad in with the good. Or maybe they're good. Who knows?
Who
Maybe it'll be a
knows?
surprise for anyone here who hasn't seen them, and maybe I didn't already blow the surprise. But yes, today we're going to talk about The Thing and also The Thing. The Thing, 1982 classic horror movie made by John Carpenter, starring Kurt Russell. If you haven't heard of it, you should go check it out right now. It's more important than listening to us. If you haven't seen the movie, go do that now. It's incredible.
Yes, please do. Arguably one of the greatest horror movies of all time, maybe even the greatest. My particular favorite.
It's up there, for sure. Yes, and then also we're going to talk about the prequel they made almost 30 years later in 2011, starring Mary Elizabeth Winstead. It's a prequel. It's about the Norwegians. I would say if you haven't seen that one, that's fine. We're going to talk about it.
You're not missing out on anything having not seen the prequel slash the sequel prequel.
That I would say is not worth not listening to us for. So stick around. We'll talk all about it.
We sure
Yes.
will.
So, Hugh, this is your favorite horror movie of all time. Why don't you take it away? Why don't you give us a little blurb? What you think of The Thing, 1982?
Oh man, I just love The Thing 1982. I think it's got two of the greatest performances by actors in their careers. Number one by Jed the dog in the opening sequence. That dog is killing it. That's got to be the most talented animal actor I've ever seen in my life. He is putting in the work. I don't know how they managed to get him to be so convincing, but they sure did, and it looks great. Plus, I love Kurt Russell. I don't think I've ever seen a Kurt Russell movie that I didn't like this man in. So it hits two marks for me right at the front, and then I love the atmosphere, the slow burn paranoia of living in an Arctic moon base, basically with an alien that
Antarctic.
same thing.
It's not the same thing. That'll be important later, actually.
Yeah, not actually. But living in a moon base with an alien that can change shapes and can be everyone. I love the Among Us, the movie. That's it's great. It's fantastic. It's done very well. The sequel,
Oh, yes.
or prequel is
Well,
it's
we'll get to that in
yeah.
a second. Let's talk a bit more about the original. I doubt this is much of a hot take, but I think it's easily John Carpenter's best movie, kind of head and shoulders above a lot of his other work, if you ask me. And I think the big reason for that is the script. The script is killer in this movie. It's so good, so well executed.
Yeah.
You know, it's got great acting, great cinematography, great music. We should probably talk about that briefly. Is it Ennio Morricone?
Yes.
And I don't know how to pronounce that.
Yeah. I think
Silly
that's
Italian.
what I've been going with. The
Very
Italian.
good. Unbelievably good soundtrack, right? Well directed, all that great stuff. But the script, beautiful. Love it. Really, really great. Like some of the best pacing I've seen in a movie, at least recently. Anyway, I was like, man, this is just flying by in the best way.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the how we get to The Thing 1982, as people have mentioned in chat already. This is based on a novella by an author whose name I can't remember, called "Who Goes There?" question mark. I have not read it. I thought maybe I'd read it in time for the stream, and that just didn't happen because I ran out of time. But it was adapted into a film in the 1950s called "The Thing from Outer Space." Now,
The Thing
what I
from
didn't
Another
know,
World, I think, is what it's called,
right? The
right?
Thing from Another World. I messed that one up. Correct. A Thing from Another World. And what I thought before doing any research on this was that, the Thing 1982, John Carpenter's The Thing, was a more or less direct adaptation of The Thing from Another World. It isn't really. It's actually a more faithful adaptation of the original story, the novella, because the novella is about people in an Antarctic base who encounter an alien buried in the ice who can shapeshift and take the form of human beings. Meanwhile, the 50s movie, The Thing from Another World, is about an Arctic base, and it's got like a blood sucking plant based monster man. So, very different, actually. And so I was
Yeah.
surprised to learn that John Carpenter's The Thing is actually a more faithful adaptation of the original story. So that's a little fun fact for you.
Yeah, this also, I don't know if this caps off his trilogy of Kurt Russell movies from the late 70s, early 80s. There's Escape from New York, there's The Thing, and then there's Big Trouble in Little China, all of which I love those movies, but of the three of them, this is probably the best of the Kurt Russell trilogy
Yes.
of John Carpenter.
Yes. So let's talk about this prequel. I almost called it a sequel again. Almost 30 years later, they decided to make a prequel film about the Norwegians. So, for reference, for anyone who is a little fuzzy on the details, what happens in John Carpenter's The Thing is that the Americans who are stationed in Antarctica run into crazy Norwegians who are going crazy. They're trying to shoot a dog. What's going on? And then they all die. And it's like, what the hell happened here? And so they have to go to the Norwegian base and see what transpired there. What transpired there is the plot of the movie The Thing 2011. We'll talk about all these things in detail, but I think I'll say right off the top, it's not a good sequel. It does an awful job connecting to the events of John Carpenter's The Thing. But
Yeah.
it tries in some ways.
It does its darndest.
Jack Kentner in chat says that it's worth mentioning that The Thing was a flop when it came out in theaters. I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
Oh,
Roger
yeah.
Ebert. Oh no, Roger Ebert panned it and called it schlock. What?
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Ooh.
That's crazy. How did you call this schlock? It's so serious. You know what I mean? Like it's got. I guess if maybe you're saying the premise is schlocky.
I don't know if I would call the premise
so
schlocky.
serious.
Like the
No.
most that you could say schlock-wise is
Roger
like
Ebert.
maybe that they kind of go a little like. I don't think that they do this. I don't think that they do this poorly, but you could maybe say it's a little schlocky how long some of the practical effects monster scenes go on. If you're an impatient, if you're an impatient old fogey like Roger Ebert clearly was,
yeah, interesting.
But it was critically. I did know it was critically panned when it came out. It was not a box office success and has since become a bit of a. I guess you could call it a cult classic or
just a classic.
Just a classic.
Maybe. That's an interesting phenomenon right there. There are some movies that kind of are still cult classics,
and that come out around that time.
They're genuinely like well regarded, but like by the niche audience that it has. But like I feel like almost everyone's heard of this movie by now, right?
Yeah,
I don't know anyone who hasn't heard of this movie, so I think it's elevated itself to classic status. I would put it in that camp. That's for sure.
It's right up there. Right up there for me. Also, just real quick, Blankface in the chat says Escape from LA. I'm not going to acknowledge that one exists.
That's fair. I don't think you're the only person to refuse to acknowledge that.
Yeah, as fun as Bruce Campbell can be, that movie is not it. So,
So, we're gonna talk about these movies. We're gonna, jump around between movies, kind of. We're gonna go back and forth. We're not gonna go chronologically through both movies necessarily, or not in that order. Well, we're gonna be jumping all around. We're gonna go non-linear here. Oh, isn't that incredible? So, I figure in order to give this some sort of structure in comparing the two films, I figured we'd assess the films on like the four pillars of storytelling, you might call them. That those being plot, characters, world building, and themes. I figured that would be a good way of sort of breaking the conversation down into something like a coherent structure.
sure.
Maybe before we get into that, we could talk about some of the filmmaking side of things. The non-story elements of the two films. The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, famously some of the best practical effects of any movie of all time. Absolutely stellar. Creature design
Incredible.
looks fantastic. Ugh, it can't be emphasized enough.
It's
Some
a
of the best
regular
work.
chef's kiss, just beautiful.
Yes. Absolutely incredible. Like I've already mentioned, the music in John Carpenter's The Thing, absolutely stellar as well. It has a very, I would call it iconic main theme. It's simple but very effective, and
Yeah,
I, there's the Thing 2011 musically, generic is what I would call it. I think it had very little interest from a musical direction, and even when they tried to ape the music from the original, they did a poor job of it. Was not impressed with that at all. But to circle back to the practical effects,
yeah.
Hugh, I believe you had something you wanted to tell me.
I did. I have a bombshell revelation. I specifically requested you not to research the
Yes.
production behind the prequel thing
Yes.
because so the production story goes a little bit like this. The director of the prequel, of the prequel thing, whose name I am forgetting.
It's not easy to pronounce.
Something
It's
Norwegian. He will henceforth be
Yes.
known as the director. Uh, he he specifically requested to be put on the project of this, what was originally intended to be a rebooted version of The Thing, because he cites The Thing and Alien as two of his favorite movies of all time. All right. He
Understandable.
also shot the entire prequel with practical effects. He shot the whole thing with an animatronic studio, puppeteers, everything. And
Wait, really?
he did, yeah. And once the film was completed with the full animatronic and practical effects, the studio did a test screening where people came out of it saying it was a bit slow. It was a bit of a slow burn, and the practical effects looked too much like an 80s movie. So the studio mandated an entire reshoot of the film.
Quick. Let me stop you there. Was that really like what was said, that it looked too much like an 80s movie?
It looked a lot like an 80s movie, and the studio came to the director and told him, yeah, this looks too much like an 80s movie. We want to scrap the whole thing.
That's maddening to me, because that would be a point of praise.
Yeah,
me,
it would be a point of praise for a lot of people now if that came out.
Yeah, not even just because it's nice to see movies in a style we don't see anymore, but you're doing a direct, prequel to a story that looks like that. It looks like that movie should be a point of praise. I remember watching Prometheus and being like, okay, this looks really good, but it doesn't look like Alien. This is supposed to be before Alien, guys. Why is everything more high tech? No, if it looked more like a 70s movie, I could imagine a test audience being like, this looks kind of dated, but like that would be a point of praise for me. Anyway, continue. They mandated
a complete overhaul to fix the slow burn, the fact that the director did not want to show the monster as much. He figured, the Jaws theory, the less you show, the scarier it is, right? And so they decided that they needed more scenes of the monster. They needed it to look less like an 80s movie, and they wanted less character development, more action. So there are significant scenes of character development that were either shortened or just completely scrapped from the movie for this re-release.
Man, do you know how long the original cut was?
I don't know. It's never been released. It's been
Yeah.
lingering in a vault for the studio for the past 10, 13 years almost. So
Wow.
they all of the CGI was a last minute complete overhaul of practical effects. The
Oh,
monster designs, all of the monster designs minus the one directly at the end of the prequel, were preserved for the most part by the CGI. But the big one at the end in the spaceship, that was a random last, like, 11th hour edition that the
wait,
direct
that whole sequence, or did they completely change the design at the last
they
minute for
completely
that
changed the
sequence?
ending.
Oh, okay,
They
because the ending sucks.
Well, so I don't know if we want to jump ahead to that now, but
I say we jump around however we feel like it. It's fine with me.
all right, so the ending of the prequel originally was that Kate, girl Kurt Russell, ends up in the
Yes.
spaceship, and as she's wandering around, she finds evidence of the fact that the alien who was piloting the ship had been collecting specimens of alien life from other planets. And the thing was one of those specimens. It got out, and it ended up killing or subsuming all of the crew, except the pilot alien, who cut off his own oxygen, asphyxiated himself, and then crashed the ship into Earth in an attempt to kill the alien. So she was walking around finding all this evidence, and she finds the pilot in the middle of the room, which was a big animatronic puppet, practical effect, and then she blows it up because the thing monster, attacks her. In the actual cut, they replaced the pilot with that weird CGI Tetris game, and they hastily added in
Terrible.
the monster that looks like the final Norwegian scientist at the 11th hour in order to cover.
Man, okay, so I managed to not know a lot of that. I did know that they overdubbed, if that's even the right word, some practical effects with CGI. That I had forgotten that I knew that, but yes, which is bad enough. I didn't know they completely changed the ending.
It's already a better prequel. Like, you hear that and it's like, oh, actually that makes a lot of sense. That's a really good. That creates a decent addition to the original movie that wasn't there before.
That almost feels like what a fan might write for an explanation of how we get to the beginning of Alien as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Definitely inspired by that. That's really interesting. The pilot, like the space jockey or whatever they call him.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thinking about that ending, if everything else is the same, the different ending, but the practical effects and maybe a bit more meat on the bones for the characters, that would help things quite a bit, I would say.
Yeah.
I still wouldn't think it's very good unless a lot more about the story has changed.
I don't know if there were too many more extensive rewrites to it. For example, I don't know if the fillings scene still happens or not, which, I would hope that it doesn't. But
yeah.
Okay.
Well, so I mean, perhaps it's obvious, but I think probably worth stating that the idea of overdubbing all the practical effects with CGI was the worst idea they could have had for this movie. Like, I mean, there is so much more to appreciate about the thing than the practical effects. But man, that's like one of its principal charms. You know, that was what makes it so scary. Because you see horrific things, but you can tell that if you reached out, if you were in the scene, you could touch it. It's like actually in the room with them.
Yeah.
When you get rid of that, it's just because I remember watching this movie. I watched it for the first time a couple days ago, and there's giant horrific things, and I was thinking about the designs of the things in The Thing 2011, and I'm like, you know what? If that was practical, that would probably be fine. It's like in keeping enough with the design principles in the original movie. But the fact that you can tell it's not really in the room with them, that it's not really there, and that light isn't hitting it the right way, and it's too glossy and all this stuff, it's like totally kills it.
And
Totally
it looks
ruins
sort of like
Yeah.
the PS3 character model stuff, like from the Flash. Yeah, like it just doesn't feel. One of the really interesting things about the practical effects in 1982, the thing, is how, like, not just how tangible they are, but how much like the actors they made them look, probably through taking molds and everything. And the CGI in 2011 just isn't like, or the rapid CGI, at the last
Yeah.
minute doing reshoots, isn't working to accurately represent what those actors look like. They just look like video game things.
You do. Yeah. Though I would say, even if it was like Avatar 2 levels of CGI quality, I still think that would be a major downgrade. I
Yeah.
think, I mean, like, I'm not against CGI on the whole. Obviously, it has its uses, and there are some stories you just cannot tell without it, and so that's totally fine.
I think a
But
good portion of the CGI in, like, The Lord of the Rings, for example, is done very well, right? Like, it might be
yeah,
a little dated at points, but Gollum still looks fantastic.
Ellen looks great. The Balrog looks great. In the sequence with the Balrog, there are stones falling from the ceiling that don't look great.
Yeah, yeah.
And you could tell where they spent their money at least. But even if the CGI quality in 2011, The Thing, was Avatar 2 levels of quality, I still think that's a major downgrade. I think you really can't beat the the feeling like you could actually touch it and that it's really there and the light from the room is hitting it the same way it's hitting everything else. You know what I mean? It's like the actors are looking at it and you know what I mean, and they're having an appropriate reaction. You just can't beat that.
Yeah.
Um, have you seen the pictures of what the 2011 The Thing CGI, like the practical effects, looked like?
No, I have. Did you find this? Did you find them?
No, I didn't look them up. You told me specifically not
Oh, I
to.
thought you were doing it, like, immediately right now. No, I don't know if they've ever
No.
released any pictures of what they look like. Although the studio, or the company that did make the practical effects, did a small independent movie afterward. Actually, let me look that up real quick because
Wait, I'm googling it and I can see some.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if you want to pull any up. That would be easy for you, but
Yeah, I
okay.
can figure
They
it.
are out there. If anyone is curious, you can Google them. Man, what a poor decision that was. Also, the idea that like, this needs to be this. We need more action, so please cut down on character. Also a bad choice because The Thing 2011 suffers from a major character deficiency problem. We'll talk a bit more about that in detail later. And especially
Yeah.
when a lot of the action scenes are all just the CGI gloop monster glooping around, going blah, 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 blah. Like, oh, I don't know if we should spend more time on this. I feel like we should avoid it, actually. Because the Thing, 1982, John Carpenter's The Thing. The best scenes, arguably, in my opinion, are the dialogue scenes where they're talking about things. In The Thing 2011, you're just waiting for the dialogue scenes to be over because they're so boring and nothing happens. And like no one's making smart decisions. No one's, logically thinking this through. Things are just happening. Ugh, terrible.
There we go. There's one of them.
What awful studio notes.
Yeah.
Boo.
There's one of
Boo,
those.
Universal. Boo.
There's one of the practical effects that they did, which you can see where that showed up, right? But like,
I'm waiting for it to show up on stream. I'm a little behind. Hold on a second. Oh, yeah, that's the one I was looking at. Yeah. I mean, that looks a lot better, at least. I mean, it's hard to say how it would look in the lighting with,
with whatever they were gonna do otherwise. Yeah, I mean,
even if the
once it's
practical effects
gone
weren't
through
as
post.
good as the original, that would still be better.
Well,
than
and the
what they
crazy thing too is that they put the whole movie through post and somehow still decided that it wasn't worth. There's another one. I'll make that a little bigger. is another one of what they, the monster that ends up, they find in the original movie with the two faces.
Hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, that's what it looks like in the movie, except not real. So
Yeah, it looks. I can only imagine that as a puppet, that would have been so much more interesting to
yeah,
see.
I think people don't really appreciate often nowadays that sometimes like puppetry and stuff like that can contribute to feel something feeling unnerving and
Oh
scary because
goodness.
it doesn't move like you expect it to. You know what I mean? I don't think people
Yeah.
always appreciate that that's actually can be a benefit,
Here's
you
another
know?
one that looks incredible, actually.
Oh, wow.
They really did
Okay.
some good work.
Yeah, that could look good. Um, yeah, so
Not sure exactly what that's supposed to be, but
I assume that's supposed to be the thing pre-human form or a form it has taken before the human form, right? Isn't that what they find in the ice?
it could be. Yeah.
You know what? Let's get into it. So, you want to start with the plot or the characters? What tickles your fancy?
Well, let's start with the plot, and we'll work the
All
characters in
right.
as we get to them. You want me to switch to our movie theater
Yeah, let's go into the movie theater so we can watch
so we
both
can
movies
watch
at the
both
same time.
trailers at the same
Yes.
time, Jerry? Let's do it.
Boom, look at it go. Wow, what a time to be alive. So, The Thing. Do you want why don't you take it away? This is your favorite. I'm gonna make you talk about it.
All right.
Start walking me through the plot of John Carpenter's The Thing in rough detail.
Well, okay, so we open with a dog running across the tundra of the Antarctic and being shot at by a helicopter. And the dog is very unsettlingly aware, it looks like, of what's going on. It keeps turning around and checking to see if they're following it, and it's, running through the snow as the bullets are flying. It's fantastic. And as it comes across the tundra, it ends up in the American base where the helicopter lands, and somebody jumps out with a gun and starts screaming in Norwegian as the Americans are holding on to the dog. And I think we get a little walkthrough of all the characters in the American base before this whole thing really goes down. Right? Is that fair to say? It's been about a month since I watched it last, so
Yeah, I mean we see a few of them. We don't know a whole lot about them yet, but
yeah.
yeah.
So he yells at them in Norwegian, and if you speak Norwegian, the movie will be spoiled for you here, because he says, and I would like to quote real quick. He says, "Get the hell away from that thing. That's not a dog." You don't
Mhm.
know what's happening, right? Like,
Yeah.
that something is up, something seems weird, and this dog is the center of it. And
So remind me, because this is one of a few things that I had a little problem with. Like, how does the helicopter blow up again?
the pilot, I believe, hops out and he goes to throw a grenade, right? And he drops it.
Yeah, that felt kind of dumb to me. I suppose, like, convenient for the story a little bit, but not impossible. But
Yeah,
that he just
they
kind
just
of
had
goes,
tons of
whoop,
grenades. They just have tons
yeah.
of grenades at the Antarctic research base,
And he does
I
a big old
suppose.
whoopsie and accidentally blows himself up. So, not the brightest Norwegian in the bunch. They're not.
Actually, I don't know what's going on here. Oh, now it's back.
It's back. Everything looking and sounding okay there in the chat. Seems to have lagged a little bit there, but if anything doesn't look or sound right, let us know. We'll try and fix it. Um, yes. So a little stupid that the guy
Yeah.
just blows himself
Well,
up, but
Tim in the chat is mentioning he doesn't just drop the grenade. He drops the grenade, realizes that he dropped it, and he starts crawling around looking for it, like he could stop the grenade if he managed to find it in the snow. uh, instead of just running away from the helicopter that's about to explode.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so that's our cold open essentially, and then it's like, what the hell was that? They
When
must have gone
the
crazy.
captain of the American base shoots our helicopter rifleman right in square in the eye. Pretty great shot for
Yeah, with a pistol. Yeah, it's
dropped
good.
him.
Good for him.
Um, and yeah, so now they're trying to get in contact with the Norwegians, and nobody. Well, the radio hasn't been working for a while, and nobody can figure out exactly why. But they decide maybe they need to head up that way and see
Yes.
what this is all about. They have a
One
couple
of the
arguments here
characters,
too,
I
which
think
are
it's Dr. Cooper, I think maybe. It's one of them. He says something to the effect of like, "Oh, they probably just went stir crazy. It happens."
yeah,
you know. So yeah, they went crazy. We're trying to kill that dog. We don't know why they were trying to do it, or our characters don't. The radio hasn't been working for at least a few days, I think he says. So he tells them to keep at it.
yeah. And
So
one
that
of the
was really
Americans
freaky.
really takes to the dog. He's the guy who watches over all the dogs they have in
Yeah,
the
he's the dogman. Clark, right? Clark's his
yeah
name?
Clark.
They all have one word names, essentially.
Yeah, Doc Cooper, or Cooper, Doc Cooper, and then Blair, Keith David, and yeah, the rest of them.
One of them got shot in the altercation. He lived. He's okay, but he did get shot.
Yeah,
I believe in the shoulder or something to that effect.
he
Bennings, I
gets
believe.
but he gets shot in the leg. While
Yeah, whatever.
Lars, the Norwegian guy whose name we
Whatever,
find out
man.
is Lars later on, misses
I don't.
misses the dog.
Anyway, go ahead.
And so now we're meeting McCready, who is cantankerous Kurt Russell. He's a very gruff.
Well, he has an absolutely great introduction scene.
Yeah, he really does. He's a gruff guy who he's introduced playing chess with a computer, and he makes a move that he thinks is pretty great, and then the computer just checkmates him. Oh yeah, pretty much immediately afterwards. So he pours his whiskey down the computer and blows it up. Calls it a cheating bitch. It's fantastic. It really just sums up exactly who his character is. We know what we're getting. He's the kind of guy who'll, burn everything down to make sure that he's the one who wins.
I think this is. There's a few, famous Kurt Russell movies I haven't seen, but this feels like the most kind of what everyone expects Kurt Russell to be stereotypically. He's gruff, no nonsense man, but it's very good. Like it's very believable. He doesn't feel like he's trying really hard to act tough or competent or anything like that. He's just very natural.
No,
I like
yeah.
it.
He's our hero man, for sure.
Then they go over to the Norwegian base. They fly over there because I think there's a storm coming in or something like that. They got to do it now.
Yep. That's a good point, Jack, too. He also, he is isolated from the rest of the research team. He's by himself, hanging out playing chess with a computer. Rather than doing...
alone.
Yeah, drinking alone.
Rather than playing ping pong and hanging out with the other guys.
Yeah. So just a little distant.
Bit of a loner. A lone wolf, if you will.
Yeah, so they end up flying over to the Norwegian base, and we find the entire place in shambles. There's been some kind of disaster going on here. They find the corpse, the charred corpse with the two faces. They find.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning. I think first they find a guy. It looks like he slit his wrist, and the blood coming out of his wrists froze. Or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And then they find outside. They find a pit where they had tried to burn something, and it's not quite clear what it is. And I like that at first.
Yeah.
They do a good job of like waiting for big reveals, right? They're like, ooh.
And they build it up slowly in this scene, too,
human.
because they come through and it's empty. They end up in the room where the guy who slit his wrists and the blood froze, which is a beautiful effect, by the way. Like, that model that they used for that looks fantastic. He slit his throat and his wrists, and he then they go into the next room, and they find that block of ice, the empty block of ice, and then I think they go outside and they find the thing that's been burned in the pit with the double
Yes.
face. So they scale it up, like they give you a little bit of
Yes.
visual storytelling, right? Like there's a dead man
Mhm.
here, and then there's some weird block that like it's not a natural
Something they
natural
excavated.
shape,
Yeah.
something they excavated, something that like something's come out of it somehow, you don't know at this point. And then they go outside, and then there's this charred thing just sitting in a pit, and they don't know what it is, and then they show you the double faces, and so they
Yeah. We bring it back to the American base and they reveal it in all its like smoldering, unholy smell glory. You know, it's horrific. It's the doctor who I believe I mistakenly called Cooper. His name is Copper. He no, is it him and Blair? I forget which one. They're both doctors. But anyway, they're doing an autopsy on it, and they discover that it's all human DNA, it seems, but clearly this thing isn't human. But what the fuck happened here? It's
yeah.
great.
And now, okay, so did they say that it's one set of DNA?
I don't remember the exact line. I it made it. I thought it was that it was like it was just human DNA, but something about it was like mid transformation. Um, because because in the thing 2011, we will learn this is actually two people kind of fused together. Which is strange.
Yeah, well,
I don't
especially
remember if
because
that was made
I
clear in the
don't
original.
know, I don't remember anything quite like that happening at all in the first one. It's not like it's trying to absorb people into one organism. It's trying to copy the person. So, I mean, I guess if it's absorbing the person and then transforming into him later, I don't know. It's a weird little twist in the prequel that we get where it turns out that it's just actually two people who've been sort of fused together at the skin. They've been melded or melted together.
Yeah, a little strange how it connects. We'll get to that later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little strange too how the thing ends up moving. That version of the thing ends up moving through the scenes that it's in the hallways, like a velociraptor from Jurassic Park. Yeah, like I don't know that somebody in the chat mentioned it earlier, and I just want to talk about it real quick now. Is that like in the first one, the thing is trying to hide, right? And when it gets caught,
Yeah.
the first thing it does is it tries to get away. It starts
Mhm.
transforming and turning into these monstrous, weird, strange creatures. But it's trying to escape and run away and hide so
Yeah,
that
the
it can
whole point
do it
of
again.
transforming itself into humans is to not be found and to be sneaky and subversive, right? It doesn't
Yeah,
want to be like out in the open fighting one on one. That's not
yeah,
what it's there to do. That's not, otherwise, why is it transforming into people? You know?
yeah.
It's kind of the whole point. And in The Thing, 2011, there are extended sequences where it's just running around trying to kill people as a giant mutated flesh thing. Like, what is happening? Did
Yeah,
we
and
totally
and
forget how
it's insanely strong for a giant mutated flesh thing that goes around eating people, and it seems like it
oh
should have
god,
no
yeah.
trouble whatsoever, uh, just completely annihilating anybody that it comes
Yeah.
across in these forms. So I'm not really sure why it needs to do that in the prequel, and then it changes its tactics completely once it
Yeah.
gets to
Let's talk about that as a through line between the two movies, right?
yeah.
The behavior of the thing itself. So what can we say about the thing in the first movie, right? It's fucking sneaky and subversive. It doesn't actually appear to be incredibly strong in the beginning, right? You know, like it what it to in order to subsume people to eat them in order to transform into them and wear their likeness, it's a long, slow process that it kind of has to do in isolation. away from everyone else, there's an implication that it's vulnerable while it's doing that, right? And
Yeah.
so it's kind of in the shadows getting people when when they're alone and all that stuff. It's isolating people, right? It's not a monster that can easily take everyone in the base if it wants to at any point. But it is in the 2011 the thing. It's so incredibly overpowered that I don't understand at all why it doesn't just attack everyone all at once and win. Which,
Yeah,
given how strong they show it to be, it could absolutely do that, and it just doesn't. So that totally obliterates the stakes, and it totally ruins what made the first one good already with like that one decision to make it too strong. It's like, ugh, you've killed it. You ruined the whole thing.
Yeah, there in the first scene where it shows up in the prequel is it's hiding under one of the Norwegian bunkers or like little outhouses, and it just launches a tentacle at somebody and it punctures right through his heart and kills him pretty much immediately. Like he's not coming back from that, right? And then several times it does. There's when it turns into the half woman with the mouth on its body, it does the same thing to somebody else. It launches it out and with a tentacle pierces through the person that through its prey, and then reels it in. When later on, ostensibly later on, it's gonna not be able to do that. Like it has to turn into a head spider and crawl away and hide. The only time that it really takes the offensive in pretty much anything until the very end of the movie is when they're doing the defibrillations on the guy who had a heart attack, and it opens its stomach and turns it into a giant maw, right? Like it's a totally different thing. The tactics of the monster make sense in the original one, and then you go to the new one, which this is clearly a studio mandate, right? Because I have to believe that anyway, because the original, or because the director of the movie basically said, like, well, no, I wanted it to be like Alien. I wanted it to be hiding. Or The Thing. I wanted it to hide. I wanted to show it less. I wanted it to be sneakier. And then the studio basically went, more action, please.
Ooh, yes. And in so doing, has made it incredibly dumb. It's worth mentioning over and over and over and over again. The Thing in John Carpenter's movie is incredibly smart, right?
Yeah.
Like when it subsumes people, it can speak the language, it understands, it has at least, if not greater than, an average human intellect.
And it knows how to lay hints and set up traps, and play people off each other.
Yeah, it's specifically leaving clues for everyone else to think that MacReady is one of the people who's been subsumed. MacReady being Kurt Russell. That's a thing that it's doing. It's misdirecting and stuff like that. It's very smart. Not in the prequel, it isn't. In the prequel, in like no small part thanks to the action scenes where it's incredibly overpowered because, isn't that scary? But then it doesn't actually manage to kill any of our main characters because the plot demands it. It's very stupid. One thing that's an important part of the plot in the first movie is that once Blair discovers what this thing is and what it can do, he immediately goes into crazy mode and starts destroying the radios and the computers, and he sabotages the vehicles because he realizes before everyone else does that this thing is a danger and cannot be allowed to leave, right? And he's like, he's yelling things like, you guys have no idea what's fucking happening here, as he's like using an axe, I think it is, to destroy the computers.
He's got a pistol in his hand and he's shooting. He's like turning around every now and then, just shooting at him like haphazardly.
Don't try and fucking stop me. I can't, this thing can't be allowed to leave. So he's breaking helicopters and he's breaking the radios and stuff like that. Meanwhile, in the 2011 prequel, it's not until like quite a bit further into the movie that they're all, once they've all agreed what's actually happening here, they're like, hey, maybe we should disable the snowcats. But they don't destroy the snowcats, they just like turn them off or take the keys out or something because we'll use them later. They do nothing to prevent this thing from leaving, right? So why doesn't it just leave?
All she does is run out and just wave at the helicopter. she runs out and waves at the helicopter as it's getting away, and then it
Mhm.
deliberately causes the helicopter to crash as it's on its
Instead of
way
just
out.
coming
Like
back.
it could have just like
Uh,
it's getting out.
well, did
It has
it
won.
control the pilot of the helicopter?
No, it controls one of the passengers, and it just
Yeah, yeah.
decides to reveal itself to the other passenger for no reason, which causes the
No.
helicopter to crash.
So dumb. They made it so stupid. And like almost all the prop plot almost all the plot problems stem from that. That like the idea that they don't do anything smart to deal with the thing. The thing is stupid now and incredibly overpowered, but just doesn't do basic things.
Yeah.
And I think this is what when I was watching John Carpenter's The Thing again. On this rewatch, it really struck me how much this movie is like a very good like oh god, why my
Who done
mind is
it?
blanking. It's a very good whodunit. You know what I mean? It's like an Agatha Christie whodunit where everyone's trapped in the house with a killer, but you don't know who it is. It has a lot in common with that type of movie. And it's very like competent, you know? Like people are making smart decisions, people are thinking things through, people are appropriately paranoid, and there's a fun game to be played as an audience member, thinking of like, ooh, well, who could it be? Well, it couldn't have been that person because at this point they were over here, and it's a game you can play. You can think about, ooh, who it could be and who it couldn't be, because there are people it couldn't be. Whereas in 2011's The Thing, we see, okay, so in terms of the plot is that they discover an alien ship, right? We'll come back to how they discover it, right? But they discover an alien, they have it in ice, and they're like, wow, what an incredible scientific discovery. This is going to be huge for scientific advancement, all that sort of stuff. And then it just leaps and bursts out of the ice. Later on that night, one guy is in the room. It bursts out of the ice, jumps into the ceiling, and gets away. The guy runs to the rest of the group, like, holy fucking shit. It just jumped out of the ice. The thing's alive, and no one believes him right away. And then somehow they all
Well,
go, like,
it's not even just
they
like
all,
nobody believes him right away. They all kind of tease him, and then he yells again.
yeah,
So they go, "Oh, okay," and then they just go check. You know, because like they're like regular people, right? Like none of the characters in the prequel movie are like they're not like unbelievably stupid. They're just like weaker versions of the ones from the original
yes.
movie. You know that
So I want to get to a very specific point here. So they he sees it jump out of the ice, burst into the ceiling. He runs, tells everybody what's going on, and then after only a few moments, they decide to go like check into it. Right in that amount of time, the thing has killed the dog, right, or has subsumed the dog, right. But
yeah.
then we'll find out. And then they all run outside. They find it under a shed, and they destroy it. And they're like, "Oh my god, we destroyed it! Look at that!" Right? But we will later find out that there are several people who are already subsumed by the thing. When did it have time to do any of this? It does. There's no time. There's no way it makes sense that it managed to get all the people that it got in
No,
that amount
no,
of
not at
time.
all.
The movie just asserts that it did. And so for the rest of the movie, I'm like, well, there's no point in thinking about who it could have gotten at this point. There's no point in trying to solve the mystery yourself as an audience member, because anything can happen at any time if the plot demands it. And it's terrible. It makes like an awful like narrative experience. You don't lean in, you don't try to guess where it could go next, because anything could happen because there's no rules.
Right,
So
and
annoying.
we
Hated
get
it.
that in the original one in the scene where the dog walks to the dog, or we don't know who it is necessarily, but the dog walks
Mhm.
into a room and we see the shadow of somebody turn around and look at the dog as it enters, and then we kind of get a little fade to black, and then
Mhm.
a next day on the base kind of thing. So we know that it
Yeah.
has had time. It's been wandering around. It's had time to at least get one other person. We just don't know who it is yet because
Yeah, and potentially more, because a lot of time has passed. In the prequel, essentially no time has passed, but more people have been subsumed. It's ridiculous.
yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. And
And
it kind of betrays the fact that they don't really care about like there being a mystery that you can solve as an audience member. It's just like, well, it could be anyone at any time in the worst possible way. Whereas like the idea, the fear that everyone has in the original is that like, oh, it could be any one of us, but in the logic of the story, it can't actually be any one of them because that, you know what I mean? Like it's,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just so much more engaging.
Well, I mean, it could be any one of them. It's just not for the same reasons. You know, it's like in the
Yeah,
original one, it could be any
that's a
one of
better
them
way of
because
saying
there's
it.
been a lot of time. In this one, it could be any one of them. It's just the reason that it could be any one of them is because the filmmakers say so. You know, like it has to happen that way.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, so I we're jumping around all over the place
We're
here. So
jumping all
I
around,
want to
but
I want to
the
talk about
central,
the real quick about the part where, because we've been talking about the supernatural strength or the the crazy strength.
keep going unless
So
you're
yeah,
saying
I'm
I have
just
some
I've it popped up with a notification on the thing. So I just, well, anyway. So he's saying in the chat that it bursts out of the ground at the end, and yeah, that's one of the things about the original movie that I actually kind of I find to be a little bit of of an annoyance in a way. Is like it feels at the end of the movie like we just need a way for it to end with an explosion. So we're gonna have it jump out of the ice after and attack them. It doesn't feel
Mhm.
much like what was going on for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Its plan is not quite the same. It feels that's probably the only complaint I have about the original movie is that the ending
Yeah.
has that scene. So
That scene, I had some problems with that scene too. For one, it rumbles under the ground like it's Tremors, and then it bursts out and it's this giant thing now, and you go, "Oh shit, that's scary." And then it just kind of stares at him and gives him enough time to like run away and then throw dynamite at it and everything. And it's like, well, are you like super fast and strong now or what? Like
yeah, like you could do
it's the
that the
one
whole time.
scene.
Like you could have done that any time before this. Okay, sure. Doesn't matter. Movie's over. We're done.
Yeah, I suppose maybe if it's like more than a few people have been, actually no, are there many people left that it's been subsumed that like it could form a giant thing, or is that just not possible at this point?
Um,
Either way, that seems a little strange compared to the rest of it.
yeah, it's definitely the
Like
weakest part of the original. Is that particular burst out at the end. Uh,
yes.
Yeah, and James Moore, thank you for the super chat. The Norris thing only reveals itself because Norris had a weak heart and it interpreted the defibrillator as an attack. Yeah, that's a good point. Makes sense to me. I like. I was going to mention how I like that the thing we know it's taken over Norris after we've seen it, and Norris is offered the position of authority, and
Mhm.
he declines. Uh,
Yes.
and I think that's pretty. Like somebody in the chat mentioned this too, but that's a great line. It's a great point for showing that it knows not to overplay its hand, right? And it doesn't
Yeah.
realize that that it's copied somebody with a weak heart. So
Mhm.
yeah, they go
I
after.
like the idea. I like the idea. Yeah, there's a point when they have to decide who's in charge, and like you said, the one guy gets offered the role and he declines. We will later find out that he is the thing, and it kind of shows his intelligence to a degree that the thing was like, no, not me. I'm not up for it because I think it's almost like it doesn't know quite enough about these people to play the part convincingly. It's doing the best it can, so it's like it's probably in my best interests to just kind of keep being in the shadows and not be
Yeah,
like the main one in
I'm gonna
charge,
pick a side
which is
character.
really, yeah.
Yeah, you like you would do if you were the imposter in Among Us and you were actually trying to win.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, it's so good. So yeah, if we could say the plot as a whole rather than going through every single scene, right? They discover the remains. They when they're at the Norwegian base, they bring back some videotapes and stuff. And what they conclude after looking at all the evidence is that the Norwegians found a UFO in the ice, and they used thermite charges to like blow up the ice to get into it. They also found um, some sort of alien specimen a little ways away from the UFO, buried in the ice. So they excavated that, they brought it back, and clearly something went wrong and it killed a bunch of people, right?
Yeah.
They've also concluded that this thing is imitating people. To what end, we don't know for sure, but it could be any one of us. It'll, it's copying its DNA in order to hide, like a mask, right? So it could be any one of us. A Blair deduces quite early on that this thing is incredibly dangerous. Obviously, it killed all the Norwegians, and it can't be allowed to leave. So he sabotages all the equipment. And so they take Blair and they put him in a shed and they say, "Well, you seem to be a danger to yourself because you're acting real crazy right now. So we're going to lock you here in this shed." And then meanwhile, they're trying to deduce who could it be, and tensions are running high. Everybody's getting real paranoid. People keep dying. There's um oh, who's the first guy that they burn?
Oh yeah. Oh man. Yeah. The guy who they catch him mid transformation, and then he makes one of my favorite monster sounds in any movie. When he looks up at them and tries to he tries to communicate. He opens his mouth and he makes that weird like howling sound, and his hands are all fucked up, and then they set him on fire. I don't remember his name, but they find out
Bennings.
Bennings, that's it. Yeah, they find out that it's taken over Bennings, and they burn him, and that basically signifies to them like
Sound.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Continue.
That signifies to them that this could be anybody here. Like, we don't know if it's imitating. Yeah, that's how they learn that it's imitating people, right? Like that's the one.
Yes, and the sound it makes. We've heard that sound in the scene where the dog tries to subsume the other dogs. Really incredible monster sound design. Such an eerie sound. And then when it comes time for the prequel, instead of just using the same sound or something very similar, there's like these weird high-pitched like pig squeals or something.
Yeah,
instead.
it's like screeching and
it's such a downgrade.
almost like zombie noises. It's not. It's nowhere near as good.
And then, in short, I mean, there's more details we could talk about, but everything goes to shit. And eventually, like everyone, we get that famous blood test scene, which is fucking incredible. We'll talk about that more in depth as a comparison to the equivalent in the prequel. But right now, we'll just say that everything goes to shit. And eventually, the remaining three decide that we're not getting out of here alive. And we need to just destroy it. So we're going to plant all these dynamite. We're going to destroy this place. We're going to burn it to the ground. And I really like that. I really like that relatively early on, the remaining survivors are like, look, we're fucked, but we need to... And it's kind of unstated. They don't say the things that you might expect them to say. Like, if this thing gets to the mainland, it's going to kill everyone. It's going to spread to women and children. They don't do any of that. They're just like, we're not getting out of here alive. We got to kill this. And they all just go, yep.
Millions of people could die if we don't stop that helicopter now. If we let it get out of here on that snowcat, millions could die.
Everyone just kind of understands what's happening and goes and does their duty, and I like that. And then as they try to destroy everything, we get the final action sequence where it kills a few more people. And in the end, it appears that they have killed it, but it's a little ambiguous because the only two that remain are
Childs and McCready.
And Childs. And both are a little suspicious of the other person, but it's just like, I guess, what do we do now? I guess we just wait.
Yeah, well, because the last time before the end that we see Childs, he's running away in the snow, for an unexplained reason, and that plants a little seed in your head there that is just like, well, wait, what's going on here? Why is he? What's happening with this? But then he disappears for a while, and then right at the end there he's back,
And it's interesting, to watch that scene and think about both interpretations, whether that's the thing or whether it isn't, and whether both make sense. We can talk about in a minute, but I would like to say to Fedkin in chat, why aren't we covering the original, The Thing from Another World? Well, because it's not even close to the same story, really, as it turns out. The 50s movie is very different. As we mentioned at the top, John Carpenter's The Thing is a more faithful adaptation of the original novella. The 50s version seems to have taken that and just did whatever it wanted to with it. It has very little in common with the story. It takes place in the Arctic. There's a plant-based blood-sucking monster man. There's no shape-shifting. There's no Antarctica. None of that. So, very different. That's sort of why we decided not to cover it, because it's kind of too dissimilar from everything else. Whereas these two movies ostensibly are in the same universe.
Ostensibly, they're basically the same movie. It's just one is, what if we did it but worse?
Yeah, so the plot of the prequel, it's essentially the same movie in a lot of respects. There's a final act that kind of deviates in big ways, but for the most part, it's the kind of legacy sequel or prequel that's just trying to do the same thing again. The Force Awakens-ish, if you will. It's the basic idea is the same. They make a discovery. Oh, and then it starts killing people and everything goes wrong. And in the end, only a couple of people survive. Essentially, it's the same movie. But as we will go into, every aspect of it is worse.
Yeah. Every single one. And a real shame because I'm not opposed to the idea that you could make an interesting movie about the Norwegian crew, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's pretty, ripe territory for a prequel that you could do that would still be interesting. You don't have to, you can keep the bones pretty much the same. You don't have to do anything radically different to make it stand out, but you could do a faithful retelling of the same story, basically, just with the Norwegian crew and make it pretty decent. It's just that they didn't do that. They failed in almost every aspect.
JJ in the chat calls it a Premake. That's pretty good. I like that. It's a remake, but before. The 50s one, it's like Frankenstein throwing people around. That sounds about right. Yeah. I haven't seen it, but I don't really have any desire to. So why don't we start with how the prequel starts? The discovery.
Oh, well, I was going to mention UFO. When you were talking about the UFO discovery, one of the things before you had watched it that you had said to me was the only information you were particularly interested in, that you didn't get from the original movie, was how the Norwegians discovered the spaceship. What did you think?
Yeah, I think after I watched the original again, I'm like, all right, time for the prequel. Which, first of all, I should say, I agree with you. It's not impossible to make a good movie out of this. I don't think it's necessary at all. And if I had power over this whole franchise, if you could call it that, I would say don't bother. Just don't touch it. It's fine. But like you said, there is potential here for a story in terms of following the Norwegians, right?
Well, the director of the
similar story.
Sorry.
I was just going to say that it's a very similar story already baked into it. That's kind of the whole idea. In John Carpenter's The Thing, it's like, oh, everything went horribly wrong with the Norwegians, and then the same thing happens to them, right? So you could do a lot of the same things with a few more inventive, props or the creature effects and stuff like that. Maybe a couple different twists in the story, just to change it up. But more or less the same thing happens. Totally possible. And as an audience member coming into this movie, I'm like, well, the only things I really care to learn more about are how they found the UFO in the first place and, what they did or what happened with the alien in the ice and how they pulled it out and all that sort of stuff. That's the only place I have any special interest in the story. So let's see how they did it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, so the director of the prequel, when he was brought on board, did his best to convince the studio not to do a full-fledged remake because, as he put it, it would be like drawing a mustache on the Mona Lisa. So he pushed for a prequel, but then ended up essentially, being shoehorned into making pretty much just a remake. So I'm sure he's not too thrilled about that. But yeah, how did you like the Norwegian discovery of the spaceship? Did that satisfy
Oh,
your
it's
curiosity?
terrible. It's so bad. It's so bad. Like, okay, so these are Antarctic researchers and stuff. They're taking core samples. They're doing all that sort of fun stuff. I hoped it would be something like, they were looking at a certain area because it had geological interests, and they were pinging the ground, looking at what's under the ice and stuff like that. They found some anomaly, and so they went out and they used dynamite and thermite charges or whatever the story says to blast it out, and then get in there and holy crap, it's a UFO. And then you can have really interesting reactions to that. Nope, that's not what happens. In this one, they're following a distress call.
It's some distress signal that just started happening. They don't know what
so
it
they're in a
is, what it's saying.
and they hear a distress call, and they're like, "Oh, I guess we'll go check it out." And so they go check it out, and they're like, "We're right on top of it, but there's nothing here. What's going on?" And then a giant crevasse opens up on this glacier, and they fall through. Oh, it's exciting action! It's like the tree in the Jeep scene from Jurassic Park. Oh my gosh, we're falling down, and oh my goodness, down at the bottom of this crevasse is a UFO. There it is. We found it. That's how we found it.
They fall until they stop falling because they've been wedged between the two sections of the crevasse, and then they look forward and they say, a Norwegian "Oh mein Gott." And as they look down, the screen goes from being completely pitch black to now we can see the entirety of the spaceship, all the texture of the spaceship, as if there's some light in there, that we didn't have before.
Their eyes are adjusting to the dark hue.
Yeah,
you just
sure.
Don't get it. That's
sure.
filmmaking.
Yeah, fine. That whatever. I don't understand how they get the snowcat out of that crevasse because it is in a pretty dire situation. I would assume.
I kind of expected all those people to be dead, but they're just around later in the story.
Yeah, they're just there. I don't know how they managed to get out of there. I have no idea.
Well, what they're gonna discover later is that they don't actually get to the UFO from the top. There's a tunnel, 200-yard tunnel or something like that.
Yeah, they dug a tunnel
to the UFO. No, they didn't dig the tunnel. The tunnel was formed by the UFO when it crash landed here, which is really dumb. Because you think that would obliterate it, but it doesn't. The implication from the first movie was that they found it beneath the ice and they used dynamite and other.
They detonated it to get it out.
Yeah, but in this one, it forms this giant tunnel that they have to crawl through. This giant ice underground tunnel to finally get to it. We never find out about what happened to that snowcat, but I guess we have to assume that those people who were in the snowcat, who were just alive later in the story, they got out of their car and dropped down onto the UFO and said, well, this sure is crazy, and then walked through the tunnel to get back, or radioed or something.
Maybe they just threw the snowcat in reverse. Who knows? It happens off screen, so you'll never know how they managed to escape with their lives.
But that's how they discover. It's not treated like an exploratory discovery, something in keeping with what they're all here doing and what kind of characters these are. They just go, whoops, and then they fall into it.
They literally stumble on it, yeah.
Yeah. So that was bad. That was
that's the cold open of the prequel.
Then we cut out. We cut out from after the title. We see a woman. Ugh, gross. They brought women into the thing. They made it woke.
Women in my thing movie.
And honestly, the first thought I had was oh no, they're bringing women into the thing. Because why would anyone assume, based on the American base and what that was like, and the time period this takes place in, that there are just a whole bunch of women. That the Norwegian base would be so much more diverse than the American one. It's really in the 80s.
Well, I mean, she's not even a member of the Norwegian team. There's a guy we in this scene we meet her. She's a paleontologist, and there's a Norwegian scientist who is friends with the guy who runs the Antarctic base for Norway. And that guy, the base commander, has called this new Norwegian who comes in to hire the woman. And he basically says, "I need you because you've dug up fossils and shit before. You're the best.
You're the best.
You're the best. You're the best, and I need the best." And she kind of goes, "I don't do that anymore. I'm not. I'm out of the game." And he goes, "Really?"
Well, I mean, that's not what she says. But
yeah, well, it follows that formula of
that
scene very much. It's that lame, honestly. She kind of gives an impromptu interview, like, "Oh, I've done a few cold weather digs," and and he goes, "Well, okay, you're gonna come with me, and
you're hired.
You're hired, and you're gonna join."
I can't tell you what it's gonna be, but it's gonna it'll blow your socks off. It's so much science.
The biggest scientific discovery expedition of the entire year. But then a few scenes later.
It's like the idea that this is going to be the biggest scientific discovery of the year.
Yeah, the year
1982.
1982, the year.
Anyway.
The Berlin Wall hasn't fallen yet, so we gotta cut that one in.
Yeah. So this is secretive, but the Norwegian scientist has decided that the absolute best ice-related paleontologist, archaeologist person is this American woman, so we got to bring her in secret. Can't tell you where we're going. He assembles a team like Jurassic Park. There's a lot of Jurassic Park being ripped off in this movie, the more I think about it. Not in a good way, though. So they're brought down to Antarctica, and in short, they are shown the big thing in the ice.
And the little thing in the ice. They find the little thing in the ice just outside of it.
They show the UFO and they're like, "Oh my god, that's a UFO!" And then look at this. There's something inside of it.
Well, he says, he says the survivor. He buries the lead here, right? Because he shows her the spaceship, and she kind of is. She's like, "Wow, this is really cool," but I don't really know exactly what I'm going to be able to do. And he goes, "Well, you could help us, with the survivor." And she's like, "The survivor?" And then they find what? They find the block of ice that's going to eventually become the iconic one from the movie. And
here's where it gets really cringe for me, because a big question I had is, why the fuck is she here? Well, the movie does attempt to answer that in a couple of ways. The first thing is like, "Oh, what do you think we should do?" And it's like, "What do you think we should do? Dig it out."
Yeah.
And like bring it back and then excavate it. Isn't this what you guys do here? What do these Antarctic researchers do here, if not like dig things out of the ice and run tests on it? Why did they need this person here for their not?
Why did they need to go? Why did they need to go get an American or an American paleontologist?
It gets really bad, right? And so we gotta walk through it.
Okay.
She's brought down here, and the first thing she's asked in terms of like, "How can I be of help here?" is, "Well, you help us figure out what we should do." And it's like, dig it out of the ice. It's like, oh, like she instructs them on how to dig it out of the ice, which is like not what they should need help doing. And then later, when it's brought back, he's like, "I run DNA samples on it and stuff like that." Or he says, we're gonna drill into it and take out some samples. And she's like, I don't know. I actually think we should be more cautious about, because we don't want to like break it or anything like that. And he's like, "I didn't ask you here I didn't bring you here because I needed you to think." And it's like, no, this is what you brought her here for.
Yeah, why did you even
run tests on this thing and figure out what it is, how old it is, yada 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 yada. Like, to do this part, this is what you brought her here for. But instead, you've decided that, like, no, I didn't bring you here to tell me how to do my job. And it's like, what did you bring her here for? Especially when, as we will learn, he wants to be very, very cartoonishly secretive about this discovery.
We can't allow
the word getting out.
We can't allow any of the other nations, any of the other bases. Stay off the radio. Don't tell anybody. Nobody gets to take this discovery away from me and from Norway.
Yeah, which is why I brought this American woman all the way down here just to tell her, I didn't bring you here to think. What the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, well,
I don't believe I just want to add that I don't believe there's any extra character development scenes that would make this make sense.
No, I don't think so either. This is very much like Lost World, Jurassic Park. Not even like the good Jurassic Park, like the Lost World part, where they're like,
Yeah.
sending people in to gather up the dinosaurs. It's like, well, don't you think they'd be dangerous? It's like, no, no. What are you talking about? No, you're not paid to think about danger. You're paid to get me dinosaurs. Like it's just really goofy, and it doesn't make any sense if he's the one who wants to preserve the discovery. Number one, that he brought a foreign national with him to the base. He could have. There has to be a paleontologist in Norway who is equally
At least
female
one. Come
and
on.
equally capable of doing this, right? Like she didn't have to be American at all.
No.
But second
She
off,
didn't have to be a woman either.
taking tissue samples, he goes to take a tissue sample of it. He believes this is from another planet. He doesn't know what kind of pathogens might be contained in that. He should know about that, and he should want to avoid any cross contamination with, I don't know,
Yeah.
some random power drill. Like
Yeah.
to
It's
take a
terrible.
tissue sample, it doesn't make any sense. Like
It's absolutely terrible. And we're off to a bad start because this is all that I really cared to see from a prequel.
Yeah.
And we've bungled it.
Well, and
already.
I'm not really sure if the prequel is implying that the way that it burst out of the ice, in that iconic way, right, is influenced by the fact that they took a tissue sample, because the ice isn't melting until after he drills into it to get the piece of its flesh.
It shouldn't really be melting all that much anyway. This is still kind of outside. There's just a wall around it. You know what I mean? This is like a garage in the Antarctic.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it should be melting at all, honestly. But setting that aside, yeah. So they decide to drill into it and take a sample from it. And he goes kind of whoops, and he goes in a little too far. And they're all like, "Oh, you should have listened to her, because now you damaged it or whatever." They get a sample, and then later they're all just hanging around, and the main guy who's like, "I didn't bring you here to think," is just like, "I've run tests on it, and it turns out that it's definitely an alien. This is the most amazing discovery." And they're all like, "Yeah." No one asks any follow-up questions. They just start singing and dancing. I'm like, "Aren't you guys scientists? Why weren't you all crowded around in the room while he was running this test? Like, don't you care about this? It's so stupid. Why wasn't she there? What I mean? He just went and did it on his own. And he's like, "Yeah, I ran the test, and it's definitely an alien. This is crazy, right?" And everyone's like, "Woo, we did it. Hooray."
Yeah.
It's so cringe. It doesn't make none of this makes any sense. They don't feel like scientists at all.
Not even the
It's
one who's
lame.
like constantly documenting it and taking pictures, although not so constantly as to explain where any of the footage from the first movie came from, right? Like they have
Yes.
footage of the
Oh.
Norwegian base that they study in the first movie, which makes perfect sense because they're lying around and they're like, okay, well, maybe this can tell us some of what happened at this big disaster zone, right? And in this one, like we got Tormund from Game of Thrones taking a couple of pictures and being the only one who's excited about an alien being a real thing, right? The prospect of an alien being real, and somehow we're gonna end up with videotape of them all standing around the big hole in the ice where the spaceship was, and videotape of everything else that they did with the alien. Like, I don't understand where
Yeah.
that came from. Why and how hard
Yeah,
is it to
so-
do?
Okay, let's talk about this specifically. We're going to jump ahead because there's a literal impossibility in the way that the movie just does not line up with the first one. Like it feels like they didn't even watch it. So, in the first one, we see footage. Hugh was already mentioned. We see footage of them blowing up so they can excavate the UFO. We see that on video. Someone recorded video of that explosion going off and them all standing around the outside of the UFO, all that sort of fun stuff. However, in the prequel, they haven't done that yet. The way they've accessed the UFO is through an underground tunnel through the ice that the UFO made when it crashed, apparently. I don't even know if that makes sense, but that's what it did. And the UFO only blows up at the end of the movie in a big climactic action set piece where they blow up the UFO. So where did that footage come from? It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't line up.
Nope.
Come on, guys. Like I wasn't watching this movie the way I would study it if I was trying to make a prequel from it, and I noticed that it's not hard. Like if you're approaching this from okay, let's do a story about the Norwegians. You should probably focus on all the parts where the Norwegians are on screen. There's not many of them. Oh, it's so bad.
Yeah. Well, and jumping ahead a little bit. So the main connecting factor between the prequel and the classic film is we know him now as Lars, the Norwegian who survives and chases the dog out of the base, right? Lars is in it and he's the sort of reasonable one, who's he portrayed as the reasonable one because he just kind of blindly listens to Kate as she, tells everybody what's what about the alien after basically she sees the cells start to subsume, and it's almost like she's seen the original movie where she understands immediately what the implication of that would be, because in the original movie they find that and he kind of goes, I don't know exactly what that means, but yeah, it could be this, it's a little like she sees it and immediately recognizes, oh my god, it's imitating people. Oh my god.
Because we rush through everything.
Yeah, well, and so real quick, because I want to finish making my point. So Lars is shown as sort of the reasonable one for the first half of the movie, at which point he disappears and is not seen on screen again until the post-credits scene, where, oh my god, he has survived, and now he sees a dog, and he's gonna chase it in a helicopter.
But where was he for the whole movie?
We never find out where he has been for the whole movie.
Or the dog.
Yeah. Where did the dog even come from? It's okay, like right at the end they remembered. Oh shit, I forgot. We got to put that in here, and so they do.
So it what happens is they like, oh okay, so they say that it's started to melt, which it shouldn't really melt all that much. But it doesn't even melt all the way at all. And they're all partying, they're celebrating. Oh, this is going to be such an epic discovery, am I right? And the black American guy, who's another guest, who was brought down here to do, I don't fucking know.
He was one of the helicopter pilots, wasn't he?
Oh, I guess so. He goes back there, and he hears something rustling in the ice, and then it explodes out. Oh my goodness, and jumps into the ceiling like right away. And so, okay, cool. We're not doing anything in terms of it being sneaky or subtle. It has melted enough to just fully explode out of the ice now. Great. Such an awful start. And then he runs and tells everybody, and it manages to get the dog at this point. That is made clear. The dog then disappears for the entire movie until the very, very, very end when they remember they need to line it up with the first movie. It's so bizarre. Like, where has he been? Where has that dog been up to? It's the thing, and it's just been off screen. The dog is like, if you go into this movie expecting it to be a prequel, you think that dog's probably going to be pretty important, right? Nope, it's not. It's not even in 99% of the movie. It's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. Lazy and wild that they didn't. I want. Part of me wonders, given the fact that the director has spoken so blatantly on all the reshoots and the rewrites that had to go on because of the studio, how much of that changed. As far as I'm aware, they mostly reshot anything they could. Right, like they kept very little of the original footage and did a massive amount of reshoots. So
okay, so my thought is though, if you have all these sequences where they had the practical thing running around going ooga booga booga, the dog is still not a part of it.
No, yeah.
Even if you're just slapping CGI over a lot of this other stuff, if you're cutting character scenes, like where's the dog up to? Like what's it up to in all this? Like Lars and the dog, the only people that we see like on camera in the first movie, they're just gone for half the movie, more than half the movie.
The dog gets no lines. Lars gets a line, "What happened to Lars?" and a response, "Well, we didn't kill him," and that's it.
You just look, where have they been hiding this whole time? If this thing got to the dog, What's it?
Well,
It
and
makes
it
no
got to the
sense.
dog, and they know it got to the dog, right? Like, because or do they know it got to the dog in the prequel?
I don't. I don't
Wait, don't
think
they
we
say
see
something
it.
about it ate his dog?
Oh yeah, they do say that. So
They
they
say
do
that
know
it ate
that,
the
but they
dog, so
don't. They don't go look.
they know that the dog got, but they don't go looking for it even after she figures out that it's imitating people by just kind of glancing at the cells.
Yeah,
So she
she
doesn't
just
even
concludes
remember
that.
that, like, oh wait, it could if it can, she doesn't even make the jump. If it could imitate people, then it could imitate anybody or anything. Doesn't even phase her.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, so in terms of a lot of the logical assumptions that she makes, it's like we just rush through the whole story because we've tacked on like another half an hour. This is actually shorter than the original movie, believe it or not. I don't know if the original cut was. It might have been longer for all I know, but shorter than Carpenter's film. Uh, but man, do they like they rush through everything such that like when we finally get to their equivalent of the blood test scene, it's like, man, we wasted no time here. Like we rushed through assumptions, we've just fast forwarded through this whole plot, and then you realize why. It's because they've tacked on this whole third act about being on the UFO ship and fighting a UFO and all that sort of stuff. We rushed through the story of the thing that they're sort of copying, pasting, but and it's only to add this dumb thing on the end that makes no sense. So it's like she makes all these assumptions. In the original, they're all making very logical assumptions about what's happening. You get lines of characters saying things like, well, I know it's not me, and because I know you're not all attacking me at once, that it can't be all of you, which means some of you at least, it's not you either. Those sort of things where they're,
Yeah,
they're like they're
it's a
questioning
great.
what
It's,
this
yeah,
could be.
it's a great line. It's a really
Yeah.
good line. Well, and you're not all attacking me, so I know that at least some others of you can't be it too. If it was as powerful as it is in
In the
the
prequel.
prequel, then I don't know why it wouldn't just like nope out and tentacle them all in the face. Kind of like what it does in the big scene where it gets Tormund and where it forms the Two-Face guy, because its arms come off. Both arms come off and just start independently attacking everybody around the room.
Yeah. It can break apart, and I really hate the entire middle of this movie. It's just such a nothing burger. It's just, oh, people are running around and like, oh, it could be any one of us. Let's not talk about it or do anything interesting. Oh, it got this person. Oh, and now I'm being chased by a giant flesh monster. And now we gotta burn it. Oh, like they just don't have any of the good conversations they had before. We don't build up tension really because they're just like action, action, action. We need more action. There's hardly any story really. It's just like then it starts killing everybody. And instead of hiding in the guise of people, it just has long sequences where it's just a giant fleshy monster with teeth and tentacles running around trying to kill everybody. Super lame,
When
super
in the
boring.
in the
Um,
original, it there's this really great moment where it sets McCready up, right? Like it tears up his
yes,
shirt and leaves it out in the snow for somebody to find, so that everybody will believe that McCready has been turned. And when McCready is out with the is it Knowles, the other black guy that isn't Keith David in the movie?
yes.
Yeah, he's out with him, and Knowles cuts him loose, and he comes back and he's like, makes the logical decision based on what he found, right? He found the shirt torn up or whatever it is that he found. It's either that or he
Mhm.
found something in his bunk. Um, but then McCready comes back and he's been in the snow and everybody gets paranoid. Oh, no human could have made it back like that. So like it's playing off of the paranoia, right? And then we
Right.
have the exact same scene happen in this one where the two American helicopter pilots somehow survive the crash that the alien caused for no reason, despite the fact that it was going to win. Basically, it was out. It was free.
Quick interjection. I would just like to point out that at no point do they go to see if there were any survivors in that crash.
Yeah, they don't even
They
check.
just wait for them to wander back to camp. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, and so one of the things they say is, "Oh, no human could have survived the crash." It's like, or you're doing the same thing from the McCready thing. No human could have made it back in that storm, right? But you're doing it worse. You know, like, oh, now there's a helicopter crash involved too. And a helicopter crash that doesn't make any sense, that only exists to sort of get those characters off screen for a while and then manufacture the tension that the original one arrived at with smart plotting, you know?
Yeah. It does a whole lot of like, oh, this is off screen now, so I don't have to worry about it as a writer. The dog and Lars, they're just off screen the whole time. That's the most egregious example. But then the people who apparently survived that helicopter crash that we never bothered to go check on, even though they might be people, or it might be humans still. Fuck those guys, I guess. They're just off screen for most of the movie because it's inconvenient.
When she's the only
Just
one
like,
who knows
what?
that they, like, at that point, she's the only one who is aware of the idea that the alien can change into people.
Yeah.
So, as far as they know, the helicopter just lost control and crashed. And and now they've got this crazy American woman running around telling them actually there's a shapeshifter.
Oh, that actually, yeah, that's a character issue too. They just like that they don't go check on their own guys because they have no idea.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They just
Like,
take her word for it, except that they don't, because, you know, they don't. They're supposed to not trust each other, so they take her word for it. But there's still some that are skeptical, but none of them are even considering the idea. They don't even mention, oh, we should probably see if we can go find a survivor.
Yeah.
We should check. They don't even mention it. Because
Nope.
because that's not the point we're at. The point we're at is that they have to not trust each other, and they have to understand that anybody could be it now.
Yeah. So honestly, I'd love to just blow through all the people get killed scenes because they're lame and they don't make any sense, and the behavior of the thing makes no sense, and there's no logic to who it could or couldn't be at any given time. It's just like, now it's this person, but you didn't see that coming. It's like, well, there was no way for me to have possibly guessed, so I don't care. I want to get to their equivalent of the iconic blood test scene from
Yeah.
the thing. Let's talk about the original first. In the
Please.
original, there's almost a precursor to the idea of the blood test. At first, they're like, well, if we can get a sample of everyone's blood, then we can kind of like compare it to the alien blood, right?
Yeah.
And eventually, a lot of that equipment gets destroyed, if I remember correctly. Right?
Yeah.
There's like
He doesn't Blair go crazy and smash some of it,
Is
or
it Blair that does that?
oh no, it's during the fight. It's during the after Jennings has the heart attack, or not Jennings. Yeah, no.
Yes.
What's his name? After the guy has the heart attack, and Copper gets his arms bit off, and the whole medical facility gets set on fire. All that is gone now.
Yeah. Okay. It gets set on fire. That's what it was. I was trying to remember. So they had a plan A. Plan A was to test everyone's blood, look at it under the microscope, see if they're human or not. All that equipment gets.
Oh yeah, and then they
destroyed.
had
It's like,
backup blood, and
Yes.
somebody got to it, like they
Yes.
because it's
And
one of the
who could
aliens
have had that key, and it's like, oh well, it could have been one of these two people who had the key. You know, whereas what the prequel does with this sort of thing is, oh, it could have been anyone, but it's like, no, it could have been one of these two people, and so they're suspicious, and so they need to be tied up, right? They do interesting things like that because there are scenes in the original movie where like not everyone is tied up. There's only a couple people because we're like, oh, it could be one of them for sure, so they should definitely get tied up, because people are making smart decisions. But finally, this is after they try to do what is it? They try to use a defibrillator on the one guy. This is the point where Kurt Russell discovers or deduces that, okay, this thing like can break off a piece of itself and still be sentient, right? Its head can just waddle away. So maybe every aspect of it is sentient in and of itself, right?
Yeah, and
so
if it's attacked,
if I
it'll try
get-
to get away from it.
Yes, it'll respond to negative stimuli. So if we'll get everyone's blood, and I'll take this flamethrower, I'll heat up a little needle thing, little piece of metal, and I'll put it in the blood. And if it's alien blood, what it should do hypothetically is it should react negatively and go, right? But he doesn't know that for sure, and there's definitely suspicion in the air that this is kind of a dumb idea, maybe, that it might not work, might not prove anything, because the great, absolutely stellar sequence, we have a couple people tied up and a couple people standing around the room, and he's testing their blood with the needle. In the first couple people he does it to, it's like, okay, well, it's interesting because it doesn't prove that it's not them yet, right?
Yeah.
That's a really interesting detail, right? It doesn't prove that it's not them. And then eventually, we finally get to there are people that we've deeply suspected it would be. By this point, it turns out not to be, like Clark. Clark, who panics and tries to reach for McCready's gun and gets shot for it. We deeply suspected that it was Clark because he was alone with the dog for a long period of time, allegedly, according to Blair. But it turns out to not be Clark. That's a nice little twist. And then McCready kills him anyway. Oh, I just want to talk about that because it's such a great little detail. So McCready kills Clark, and Childs is like, man, so it wasn't him after all. You just killed him, huh?
That makes you a murderer, don't it?
That makes you a murderer, doesn't it? And Kurt Russell, he doesn't bother arguing with them, but you can tell based on how he responds that he's kind of nonplussed about that. You could tell that in his mind, he's just like, well, he came at me, he tried to kill me, so I shot him. Like he's not broken up about it, and I just think that's an interesting bit of character for him.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's so good. This stuff is so good.
He's not rattled by the attack. And I love how Childs is trying to gain some ground in the conversation in that scene, but he, like, McCready is just not, like, completely not phased. Is like, yeah,
he's almost not acknowledging him a lot of times. Yeah.
Well, because he knows that it could be Childs, and he doesn't want to. He's like, I'm not gonna, he doesn't want to get started on more arguments that'll lead to any more chaos. He's just keeping it going, right? He's not engaging with it. Yeah. It's fucking great. He is so good.
He's such a great character. And I think by this point it's been established that it could be McCready. So there is a little seed in the audience like, oh my God, maybe the guy we've been following, he's not the only person we follow. We definitely see perspectives that aren't McCready's. It's interesting to note that the movie doesn't take an omniscient perspective ever, but it does go into other people's perspectives other than McCready, though it is quite clear that McCready is our main character. But, this is, a kind of movie where maybe McCready could be the thing, It's you could believe it, right?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a shock, I'm glad it wasn't ultimately, I think it's better for the story that it isn't. But it could have been. And so when he kills Clark, it's like you might be suspicious of McCready as well. Unless you're super attached to him and you think there's no way. Like, it could be him. Anyway, it's great. So we're doing the test, and finally, we get to, oh God, what's his name? Is it Palmer?
I think so.
A little jumbled up in my head. Palmer is one of the people.
Palmer's the one who fails the blood test.
Yes, and when they touch the blood with the hot little needle thing, it goes.
Dude, every time I've shown this movie to a person who hasn't seen it, right? Like, this scene is a guaranteed, like, they freak out and jump 6 feet in the air kind of moment, you know? Because, like, it's done so well. They've got the perfect amount of time between the petri dish and the needle, and then the hissing noise, like, and the music cuts out, everything is dead silent, and then it happens in the middle of a conversation. He's in the middle of talking, and he does it, and like that, the talking distracts you from the fact that it's going to happen, and then it jumps up, and people just freak out. It is so incredible.
That's worth mentioning because I think this is a masterclass in like actual horror filmmaking, because so many movies today there'd be like tense music to build up and then it cut out and then it would happen and the music would go stinger, but in this it's like there's so many people you suspected before Palmer that like you're almost, when it's not Clark, you're too busy thinking about, oh, if it's not Clark, then what does that mean? And they're still talking, and then in the middle of talking it just interrupts what's being said. Because you're not focused on Palmer, because you're like, it's not a character you're interested in really at the moment. You know what I mean? There's so many things it does to misdirect from the moment where it's actually going to go ooga booga booga. Then when it does, it's like, man, that's incredible. That's just so good.
It's
So
fantastic.
effective.
And then from that we get this resultant like scene where he's like shaking in the chair and everybody's screaming, and this is where the flamethrower stalls, and yeah,
Mhm.
it's beautiful. It's incredible.
Yeah. Um, yeah,
So
so
what
they're
did
all
we get
tied up.
in the prequel?
By the way, they're all, yeah, there's another little bit of detail that's fine. I just want to talk about this scene for a bit because it's great. We'll get we'll get back to the bad version, but let's stay in the good for a little bit longer, please.
Yeah. Okay.
So, three of them are all tied up on the couch, and he's starting to transform into the thing because the jig is up, right? So he's going to try and get someone else while he can, right? I thought it was interesting that like the thing decides, instead of going like that test doesn't prove anything, it just accepts that it's found out now and it's going to try and transform. And importantly, it doesn't just shoot tentacles out at people and immediately kill them, right? It starts to transform because it's a process that isn't quick, right? That just makes it
Yeah.
so much better. Because like if it could just zip tentacles around the room and go boom, boom, dead, 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 then it's like the whole thing's over. Why would you ever write it like that?
Yeah, I do. It's almost like the better filmmaker wouldn't.
Yeah. So, one thing I want to talk about the original is that like, okay, so every little piece of this thing is sentient down to the molecular level, right? Um, that's really interesting. So when the blood goes ooga booga booga, and they burn Palmer and all this stuff like that, it makes it clear that there's no real way to destroy it completely. That burning it, if they do it completely, like reduce it to ash, the implication is that that could work, right? It's
Yeah.
not made 100% clear though, because if you explode something and then its blood gets everywhere, then it's like, Terminator 2, it could just be liquid, and I don't know if it could form together again. That's an interesting question. You know what I mean?
Well,
Because like that
yeah.
the blood is sentient, but like what can it possibly do except be sentient blood now?
Can it
Would
take
it have to
over
work its way up?
everything, from the ground up? This is.
Slowly but surely, like tiny organisms at a time, maybe. I guess if the blood gets into someone's system, then it could take over them, right?
I, d-
Well,
I
I
don't
don't know
know.
about
I
that
don't know.
because
It
actually, I don't think so because I think they make it clear that it digests it in order to subsume it, right? Like that it eats it.
Oh, that it was kind of digesting the dog. Yeah. It's like the dog skull.
That seemed to be they make that quite clear that it needs to like consume it, right? So just getting the blood into someone's system, like, haha, you have AIDS now. Like, I don't think that's how it works. I think it needs to be that it consumes it. So I suppose I'm just thinking this isn't super important, but like if there's loose blood of this thing just sitting there, out on the ground, like if it could, you know, consume some other small bacterial organism, it could like eventually work its way up, maybe. Is the
Yeah,
thinking.
maybe.
The point being that it would be incredibly hard to destroy completely. And so, what I quite like about this movie is that they've eventually decided that we just need to burn this whole place to the ground. That's really the best we can do. It's the best we can hope for. A fiery inferno of an explosion. Just like that's the best that we could do to destroy this thing. And it's at the end, it's kind of like, well, did we kill it? I don't know. That's the best we can hope for, I
Well,
guess.
and one of the things that they realize this with too is that when they're looking at the burned corpse that has two faces, the tissue in that burned corpse is still alive. Is what the doctor says. Copper says that.
Yes.
So
But that it wasn't burned to the point of being reduced to ash,
yeah,
though.
yeah, but
Which
you
to
have to
me,
like actually incinerate it. You can't just it'll be in
are
it
yes,
charred and immobile, but it like the cells and all that are still alive, which makes it dangerous. Is one of the things that
yes.
they
James Moore points out that it does appear to need to consume things alive. Like
that's
we don't see it eating up dead bodies or anything and bringing them back to life. So yeah, I think
yeah,
it
that's
does.
true. That's true.
Yeah,
Although also like in a situation like you, I don't know if we can assume 100% that it couldn't do that. Because in a situation like this, the only problem with that would be everybody's gonna know that the person who is now alive again was dead, right? Like,
Yeah, there's that aspect of it.
it can't really hide very well if
That's true.
if it's using a court, somebody that they all know has passed.
Yeah, mostly I was asking that question about like what the blood can do is because I was wondering like for the sake of this story, it doesn't matter because the way they handle it in the story is pretty good and it's about the best you can get. But I do wonder, like, what would it take to obliterate it entirely? The implication of the movie seems to be that if you sufficiently destroy it with fire, that would work, right? Freezing it doesn't work; it just goes into stasis. But burning it seems to actually do the trick. That's the implication, anyway.
Yeah. So then in the
Anywho.
prequel,
Yeah, the prequel.
so they wanted
they
to
have a
say
lot
they
to live
wanted
up to.
a blood test scene, and why wouldn't you? It's a fantastic scene. It's one of those ones that kind of solidifies the movie as one of the greats. So of course you want a scene like that, and if you're making a movie that's essentially a remake, of course you want to get the member berries of such a fantastic scene. So what do they decide to do in this one, Jamie? They use teeth fillings.
They use teeth fillings. Mary Elizabeth Winstead notices at one point that a person who has been copied is gone, and on the ground is like a titanium rod that was in their body somewhere, their arm or something like that.
Oh no, she finds that by doing an autopsy of the. She helps with the autopsy of the one that was eating the guy under the ground. She finds the titanium rod in there, and then she finds the pile of fillings on the ground in the shower.
No, I thought that titanium rod was just on the ground. Why would it be in the body?
She pulls it out of the stomach. She pulls it out of the stomach of the thing. And she goes, "What's this?" And they're like, "Oh, he had a titanium rod in his arm."
But what can she conclude from that in that moment if it was just in the stomach of it, like mid?
It was like the only thing that was not being copied. It had been like separated.
Okay. I think you're right. That makes it less conclusive even than the movie thinks. Because later she'll find a pile of metal teeth fillings on the ground and being like, "Ooh, it couldn't copy these. Therefore, anyone who is the thing won't have metal in their mouth if they have metal teeth fillings." And that's how we're going to tell. So open up your mouth, boys. We're going to shine a flashlight and see if you have metal teeth fillings. If you have metal teeth fillings, then we know that you're not
it
the
can't
thing.
copy inorganic material. So it's at some point it, I don't know, spat or pooped these fillings out.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about this one, right, is number one, now we have to assume that pretty much nobody in the original had any fillings in their teeth, right?
Or that they never discovered that was the thing that they could check, which is reasonable.
I guess. Just,
I don't think
that amount of people.
I don't think the metal teeth. Well, no, there's no reason that they would know that unless they happened to discover that teeth weren't copied if they found teeth on the ground. If they didn't, then there's no way to know that's a thing nor to check.
True. Okay. Yeah. True. It's not a. What I'm saying is, it's not really a flaw against them. It's more of a flaw that, like, now I have to believe that not one of those men at the research station had ever had a cavity. You know, or that they had never found one.
Implication. No, the implication is that they never thought to check, not that none of them had fillings.
Okay. I mean, I still don't. I don't know. I don't buy that they wouldn't have found that kind of thing. In that.
I don't think it's in the chaos of everything going around. I don't think it's impossible that they never noticed that a couple fillings were just loose on the ground. That doesn't bother me that much as how this scene plays out in comparison to the original. I mean, it's not as cool. It's not as interesting, I think. Oh, open up your mouth. Let me check your teeth.
So what he says, Nick in the chat is saying that they find shredded clothes in the original one, but they find the shredded clothes that they find are like somebody's been attacked, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
it's not
It's not
like
that it could. Yeah.
it couldn't imitate the clothes, so it spat them back out, right? It's like it tore the clothes up as it was attacking the person. And then one of
Yeah,
those
and
shredded
then once
pieces
it
of
was.
clothes is actually a plant, right? Like,
Yes, there's
so,
that too. And then one assumes that once they've been copied, they put on clothes to act more like a normal person because, again, they're trying to hide.
yeah.
So that makes perfect sense. I think the fillings thing is like, yeah, I don't think that conflicts necessarily with anything. It's fine. It's a little bit more lame to me. But okay, we're gonna check everyone to see if they have fillings, and like someone points out, like, well, like I don't have any fillings. Am I gonna be punished because I didn't have any cavities? And they're basically like, well, you don't have any fillings in your mouth, so we don't know that you're not the thing. So you go stand over there. They don't tie him
Yeah.
up or anything like they do in the first movie when they suspect people might be the thing. They tie them up, but in this they don't. They just go. They say, "Oh, go stand over there."
Yeah,
And
go stand in the other corner, away from us with the flamethrowers. But the other thing that I wanted to mention about the filling test is that it's not really clear exactly what they're looking for when they have everybody open their mouth, because we don't know at what stage the fillings are being spat out, or what, however they end up on the floor. Like if if it happens after the thing has completely subsumed the person or not. But are they looking for clean teeth? Like would it just imitate
they're looking.
a perfect set of teeth, or what would it be spaces where those teeth had been, or would those teeth be full of
I think.
holes? I don't like. I'm not
I think. Yeah, that's a
sure.
good question. I think what you have to assume is that if a person in that scene was the thing of a person who had fillings before, that there would just be little gaps in their teeth. Like there would be no metal there. There would just be actual, cavities in their teeth. What that would look like, I don't even know how to picture that in my head exactly. I guess you
Yeah,
would see the gums beneath.
I
Because I don't. Yeah, because I don't. I think you have to assume because it imitates everyone else so perfectly down to their like balding hair and stuff like that, that it wouldn't have any sort of way of improving on their DNA such that they have better teeth. You know what I mean? Like
oh yeah, no,
I
I
think
mean like
it imitates them exactly as they were. It can't do metal, so there would be gaps where the metal fillings would be.
okay, yeah, because that would, I think that's what you would have to assume, is that there would be gaps, not whole teeth, though, right? Like,
Yeah, there would be gaps. There'd have to be gaps.
yeah.
There's no way there wouldn't be.
So so,
So
so
I can't picture in my head what that even looks like. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Can you?
and so the guy who's got a full set of teeth in there that look perfectly normal, like he's probably not the monster. Like, I think we all know he's
No,
probably
that's a good point. That's someone he could have said if he was thinking it through, or Mary Elizabeth Winstead could have said if she was thinking it through. Like, well, I'm looking at your teeth and I don't see any holes in them. If you had fillings that are gone, there should be gaps, right? So, yeah, that should eliminate him as a suspect, but it doesn't because they don't really think about it too hard. And then, oh, what's the big tense buildup, Hugh? Like, what is this all building to?
uh, this is the porcelain guy, right? He's like, oh, I have porcelain teeth, and all right, I have porcelain filling. Well, hold on, wait, what are we talking about here?
Okay, so I was doing a little bit of irony because this builds up to nothing.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was gonna say it goes. The scene goes nowhere, right? Like they don't.
It goes nowhere. We don't use this test to find out who the thing was in this scene at all. Fucking lame. That's so lame. This is our equivalent of that scene. It's definitely presented that way. Everyone's gathered in the same room and we're testing everybody one by one, and we have our method of testing people. And this doesn't actually amount to anything
Yeah, it's not like she
at all.
shines the light in somebody's mouth and like she notices a
They're
bunch of fucked up teeth, and then all of
or
a sudden it
whatever.
like its head splits open and a new alien, comes out.
No, that doesn't
It's just a
happen at
nothing
all.
burger of a scene. It goes nowhere.
Super cool, guys. Way to live up to the original. So lame. Also, it's a very minor thing, but he's like, "Oh, I have porcelain teeth." So it's like, well, I mean, porcelain's inorganic too, but I guess that still doesn't answer the question because what you should see is gaps in the teeth,
Yeah.
right? Cavities. You should see cavities.
Well, she's
But
operating on the idea that it just replaced the teeth that had fillings with perfect replicas.
well, that wouldn't make any sense, so that's a dumb thing to assume.
Yeah, well, yeah, and yeah, so like yeah, it's the blood testing, but like worse in conception,
Infinitely worse
worse
in
in
every way.
execution. Every single thing that they could have done worse, they absolutely did. They took it and made it
Yeah.
terrible.
So like I think the next big scare isn't it like someone comes in and like there's the arm gets thrown off and it attacks somebody. I don't even
They
remember.
somebody comes in, turns into an alien, and then they grab two arms and they pull both arms off, and or no, they don't pull them off. That's in the original one. Sorry, that was actually like kind of fun. No, the arms fly off and start crawling around like, the monster version of the one from the Addams Family. And it just starts causing chaos in the room. It's like tentacles are flying around.
Yeah.
Somebody fell on the.
And we're basically at the point in the movie where it's just all chaos and people getting killed and running around and trying to burn things but not really doing it. And the thing has given up on all subtlety or subversion or imitating people. It's just wandering around from this point on as the double-faced, split-faced person.
Yeah,
it's giant teeth monsters.
And this is where that problem comes up, because it's not. When we had talked about this before, you had said that you had always assumed that was the monster in the process of imitating somebody else, or of
Yeah,
of imitating
this is a
someone.
minor thing, but one of the other points of connection this movie tries to make with the original is that split face thing, as it's called from the original. A person who appears to be. I have to look really closely at the prop from the original, but I have this distinct impression that it was supposed to be that like, oh, this is definitely human DNA of a singular person, but it appears to be mid transformation, which is why the face is all Picassoed. It's like kind of split in half and stretched almost into two heads almost. I didn't get any impression from the original that this is actually two people's faces who have been melded together in a strange sort of goopy way, which is what happens in the prequel.
Yeah, like
it's a minor thing for me, but it is strange.
it presses up against the guy who's fallen on the ground after being, hit by a tentacle, and their cheeks just start to melt into one. And then, why? Because we need to do the Two-Face thing from the original movie.
That's okay. That's where it really becomes a problem because it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
because in the original, if you assume, as I did, that this is a person mid-transformation that they burned alive and it kind of stopped the process, but it hasn't killed all the cells entirely, whatever that actually means. Instead, now there was a person who was walking around upside down. Ooh, spooky crab man! Look at him go. He's being a goopy person. He's not trying to pretend to be a person. He comes up to a person, like kind of lays down on him, and just puts his face onto him, and like doesn't eat him to subsume him. Just manages somehow to subsume him by laying on him hard enough until their faces fuse together, and now he's part of that thing now. Doesn't make any sense.
And now that thing isn't trying to disguise itself as a person anymore. Now it's just crawling around like the Velociraptor from Jurassic Park, where it has a Velociraptor scene where it like comes through some metal door, right, where the guy's hiding in a pantry, and it starts stalking him.
Sorry to interrupt, Nick S. This is the line that I'm thinking of. Blair specifically says it only had one set of internal organs at the autopsy. Thank you, Nick. That's what I was thinking of. That's where I got that impression from. Yes. Blair, when he's doing the autopsy on the split-faced person thing, he says, there's only, everything internal looks fine. It's just like one set of human organs. And then you look at the face and go, well, why does it have two faces? And the implication by the end of the movie is that, it was mid-transformation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that makes
sense.
it way worse.
It does. Yes.
It just like,
Ugh.
oh my god, it wasn't even trying to imitate
But yeah,
him, and they caught it. It was, oh yeah, no, it was using him to turn into a spider
something more
monster,
Cronenbergian, I guess. I don't know. It's just
turn
lame,
into a
kind of
Cronenberg.
fake looking CGI body horror now. It's not trying to, because if it were trying to subsume people and then it could like, come up to the people who are hiding later and it's like, "Oh my God, I've been looking all over for you." It could do stuff like that. You know what I mean? If it were smart, but I guess it's decided that it's too late. It's time to go rawr and try to get everybody, which is really lame. They don't do a very good job of killing it. And somehow, I don't remember exactly how, they finally find their way to the UFO. Uh, this is where the movie completely deviates from the original. Before, it was rushing through everything and doing all the scenes you know and love, but infinitely worse. Now we've added this thing where they're going to go to the UFO, I guess to destroy it because they think that it's trying to leave.
Well, so
Now, Hugh,
what happened?
why would they? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say how we get here, right? Is it the crab man with two faces chases Joel Egerton through the pantry? At one point, I'm pretty sure he uses an axe to chop one of the arms in half. The two halves of the arm then crawl around separately and then come back together on the wall and reform into one arm so that Mary Elizabeth Winstead can torch it with the flamethrower. They burn
Why did it do that?
Yeah, why does it do that? I don't understand. Why does it need to be one thing every
It was
time it
doing better
splits?
separate.
Every time it
Yeah.
splits off, it should be a new organism. That's kind of its strength, right? That like it can survive that way if it has to.
Yeah.
So for some
Well,
reason it does that.
Yeah.
And then
I was just gonna.
they torch
I just want
the
to throw.
Spider-Man. Go ahead.
They do torch the Spider-Man. It came back together as two hands just in time to get killed, even though it would have been better off staying separate. Now, here's a question. I don't know if this is specified or whether you think this is something we can deduce from watching the original, but is there any logic to the idea that when it's in a form of a human being or when it's in the form of a dog, it has that relative level of intelligence, but when it's just a little head on a spider walking around, or when it's just blood, it has the sentience level of only like a fraction of a thing. Is there any logic to that, or do we assume that the blood is just as intelligent as everything else?
I don't know
All we
about
really
the
see of the blood, for
blood.
example, is that like it reacts to negative stimuli because it wants to survive. I think there is maybe an idea there that the smarter being that it's imitated, the smarter it is? Question mark. I don't know.
Well,
What do you,
maybe.
what
I
do
don't
you
know
think of
because
that?
the dog seemed. I was okay. So JJ in the chat is saying exactly what I was thinking. That I think the main reason that dog is so unsettling at the beginning is because it does not seem to be like a normal dog, right? It seems way more human, that like it or way more
Well, okay.
intelligent.
So, question: do we think that the dog is actually? It's definitely not acting like a normal dog. Which props to that dog actor. That's the most uncanny performance I've ever seen. Like, it's not behaving like a dog. I think there's the one scene that is really great where it's walking down the hall, it sees the guy's shadow on the wall, then it walks in, it hits its marks beautifully, it's doing a great job. But the scene that really gets it for me is when they put it in the kennel with the others, and the way it lays down in the middle of the room. I don't know how they got it to do that. It's so good.
But the way it like it
lays down
hesitates before like it hesitates before going in, and then it just kind of very slowly creeps into the kennel, and then very like uncannily like lays down as if it's not at home here. It knows that it's in a bad, like it knows that it shouldn't be here, and that the dogs are gonna figure it out, right? So
yeah,
like
they're deeply suspicious of it almost right away. So, okay, I don't know if that indicates to me very compellingly that it's like it doesn't quite know how to act like a dog. It's never really seen another dog, or if it did, it saw them at the Norwegian camp. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's acting different from a dog. I don't know if it's acting smarter than a dog
So the reason that I'm
necessarily.
saying that is because when you watch in the cold open, it constantly is like looking over. I don't know if dogs like necessarily would do this.
I mean, if
It's
you're chasing a
constantly.
dog, I feel like it would look back at you to see if you're still chasing it, trying to kill
Well,
it.
but it
I don't
also
know if
so it's
that's
doing that, and then it also later on is watching them through the window when they're leaving, like keeping an eye on them as they get into the helicopter to fly away to the spaceship, which just like to me the performance of the dog is kind of indicating that it knows where they're going. But maybe I'm just reading too much into it. I don't know. I
well,
think that the
it
uncanny
could
thing about
still.
it is that it is smarter, or it
Hmm.
seems like it has a motivation that a dog
Well, yeah,
doesn't
it's
hold.
not a dog, right? It's not a dog. That much is clear. It has knowledge and motivations that a dog wouldn't have. I don't know if that necessarily indicates, from what we've seen, that it's behaving with a smarter level of like brain computation power than a dog would have. And the reason I think that maybe there is a spectrum here is because we do seem to see things like the head spider is just kind of like in a panicked sort of like it's just trying to escape. You know what I mean? Like there does seem to be a spectrum because when it's a person, it can imitate human speech and human behavioral patterns and stuff like that quite well. I think there is some logic to that idea.
Well, yeah,
There was a
it
couple
definitely
things.
doesn't carry over the intelligence or the brain capacity of one species to another, right? Like, it's not like the dog can speak
Yes.
English, but
No.
it. I guess what I'm getting at is that I feel like it has its own consciousness there at every level, regardless of what traits it copies over. Does that make sense? Like it has its own intellectual capacity for planning and for its own survival that doesn't get erased or that doesn't falter when it takes over something else. Like it doesn't get overwhelmed by a dog's natural instincts, right? It
No, it's definitely not. Yeah, it's not being influenced by any of those things. It seems to have complete control. Um,
and this is a good point in the chat right now too. That Blair was smart enough to build a spaceship. Like it knew how to build a
yes.
spaceship when imitating him, which is
Yeah. It definitely has. It has. I think you have to assume that it has knowledge and memories. That it doesn't get its memory wiped every time it changes. For example, I think you have to assume that it has knowledge that the person it's imitating doesn't have. That's all fine with me. But like, for example, I don't think that as the dog it could have built the spaceship, not just because of its dexterity issues.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? I think there might be. It can kind of go either way, which is sort of it's just a curiosity I have. But I think there is a logic to the idea of that, like it's as capable as the body it's imitating.
Well, I'm with you on that one. It definitely can't it can't speak English as a dog. It can't do you know
Hmm.
it can't do certain. It's limited by the physical capacity of whatever is inside of it. But I don't think that the brain I don't know if I'm with the idea that the brain only expands when it imitates a human. Like when it's a dog, it's still got the intellect that it would have as a human,
Definitely
as
the
an
same
alien. Yeah,
instincts. Definitely the same instincts. I don't know about the same intellect. It doesn't really factor into the story, but it's just
not really, but
no. It's
it is
what I
interesting to talk
quite like
about.
about the thing. Yeah, what I quite like about the thing, just in general, is that there are a lot of things that are unanswered about it, but very little of which make the story implausible or create problems in the story. It's just like, for example, in the original, we know that Blair got by the thing at some point, right? While he's out in
Yeah,
the shed, it got to him, and then he stayed in the shed so he could secretly build that UFO to try and get out, right? while the other thing was running around trying to subsume people and plant clues to incriminate McCready, all that sort of stuff, right? And then I think the indication, like the first time we see Blair after he's been taken, I think, is when we get that great shot where they open up the little latch thing,
Yeah.
and he's just sitting there, and there's the noose tied, and he's like, "I don't want to be in here anymore. I'm ready to come back inside. I'm feeling much better now."
Yeah. Yeah.
I really like that scene. I think you have to assume by that point that it's been working on the spaceship already, and that it's pretending to be Blair in that moment.
Yeah.
It is kind of an open question if it had gotten Blair earlier, like when he just started destroying everything. I don't think he would have. Like, I don't think the thing would have destroyed all the radios and helicopters and stuff. I don't think it's in its own interests. So there are questions like who got to Blair and when, that aren't answered, that don't necessarily need to be answered, because I think there's plenty of opportunity for it to have done that we just don't see. And so there's little things like that. There's little things about like, oh, what does the thing actually look like in its native form? Does it have a native form? What does that even mean? That don't need to be answered. And there's little mysterious things, right?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of annoyed with the prequel for trying to answer that last one. Like, one of the best things for me about Carpenter's movie is that we see where it used to be in the ice, but we never get to see what it originally looked like. And that's cool, because you don't know, because it imitates things. It's almost better to not know. And in this movie, though I guess maybe the original cut made it clear that it had taken the form of a different alien at some point, we see it's kind of insect-like. And that kind of ruins the mystery a bit for me. I don't know about you.
No, yeah, I didn't like that at all. I did like how shadowy it was when they first pull it out of the ice. They show the shadowy figure in the block of ice. But when they get to the point where they're looking at it with flashlights underneath the hut, it looks terrible. It's like, this is why.
It kind of looks a little bit like the bugs in Starship Troopers.
Yeah, and I'd be much more okay with that choice if we had gotten the version where it had taken over the body of another alien, right? Like if it had imitated the pilot of the spaceship or something. And so that's not the actual form. And if we had gotten to see the pilot of the actual spaceship at the end of the movie and it looked like that, that would have been fantastic.
It would have been better. That's for damn sure. It would have kept the mystery, and the mystery is one of the things I liked. So, yeah, I don't know if you wanted to circle back to anything we breezed through there, or move on to the final act where they go to the.
I was just gonna. So Nick mentioned this, and I was gonna mention this too. Is like I always liked the idea that the noose had been made before Blair got to.
Yeah.
But I also like the idea that the alien made the noose to try to get sympathy points with the others. Like pretend like he's thinking about killing himself, or like he had gotten to a point where he had thought about killing himself. So in order to try to like maybe be like, look, I'm much better now. Please let me come back in. Look, see, like I got to this point, but no, I'm feeling better. So I like that. I don't.
It kind of works either way. There's a few things in this movie that I think work either way that you don't quite need answers to, and it's kind of rare that a movie can pull that off, in my opinion.
It really is.
Where there's unanswered questions, but there are multiple plausible interpretations that all work, and they're all interesting in different ways, and so you can kind of pick and choose which one you find the most interesting. The ending is an example of that. We shall return to it, but first. We got to talk about what they've tacked on to this movie, and that's the UFO sequence.
Before we get to that, I just want to. We mentioned it briefly earlier, but the helicopter pilots from the crashed helicopter. We're going back to the prequel now. The helicopter pilots from the crashed helicopter stumble back. They have the Norwegians, or Mary Elizabeth Winstead, has Lars watch them. She somehow, I think, did they give them the filling test? I can't even remember. I think they do, right? They give the American
I
pilots
think
the
they
filling
do.
test. That proves to her that they're not, that they're not aliens. So they go off
Yeah,
with Lars,
sure.
and then the next thing you know, one of them is coming back and Lars is gone. Like, or no, they take
Mhm.
over. They stage a hostile takeover. Lars is watching them, and they come in having incapacitated him and stolen his flamethrower. That's what
Yes.
happens. Yeah, that's what happens. And then that's how Lars disappears from the movie. And as Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Joel Edgerton, apologies to the Aussies in the chat for my bungling of his name before, Joel Edgerton, uh, she asks him what happened to Lars. He says, "Oh, we didn't kill him," and then she doesn't bring it up again. And we get this. We
So
get
would you?
this. Yeah. Why would you? Where is he? What's he been doing? Who knows? But we get kind of a weird shot, a little bit of a Chekhov's earring shot, where the camera cuts over to a shot from behind Joel Edgerton, where we see an earring in his left ear at an angle that makes it a little difficult to think that that would have been like that wasn't seen by Mary Elizabeth Winstead in that scene. That's specifically for the audience
For the audience, like,
to
oh, remember
recognize.
this.
Remember, he has an earring in his left ear. That might be important later.
Yeah, they're telegraphing it, which is something that the original doesn't really do.
No.
Honestly, there's a couple little moments. Um, the thing has a few split diopter shots. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's basically you put a little special thing on the lens so that you can focus on two different planes at the same time. You've seen them in a few things. A few older Spielberg movies have them. But we have someone who's closer to the camera. For example, I think it's Clark at one point. He's holding a scalpel like a knife. And then there's the rest of the group is a little further away, like 10 feet maybe away from the camera. And they're like both are in perfect focus, which is not something you can get with a normal lens. It's kind of a rare filmmaking device. You don't see them a lot anymore. Like they draw a lot of attention to themselves, which is, I think, the big reason why. Quentin Tarantino likes them. I think there's a few in Hateful Eight. But they're used very well in The Thing to
Yeah,
like
they
draw
are.
attention to two different things at the same time. And you could look at that as a way of telegraphing things, but it's almost like just it keeps everything on edge because there's not anything about the scalpel that's like, ooh, super important. Remember that for later. It's just like he's got a weapon and it looks like he's thinking about like when might be a good time to try and stab someone. It's almost a misdirection more than anything else. Whereas in this prequel, they're like, oh, pay attention to the fact that he has an earring. And I'm like, why? When is like, I guess this is going to be important, but I don't know why you're showing me a close up of his earring right now. It's just like there's no good justification for it other than remember this, we're going to make this important later. This is going to be bizarrely and specifically important later. So look at his earring right now.
In about 5 minutes,
Yeah.
this is gonna matter. Just keep it in mind. So
Yeah.
yeah. So then we get
Yeah.
now we're taking the detour into the spaceship, um, because for some reason the thing is trying to get to this spaceship. It's taken over the last
Oh,
body of the last Norwegian.
this is what I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
So the thing is trying to get back to its UFO, and they need to prevent it from leaving. But Hugh, when we were watching this movie together, you asked a question that I would like you to repeat now.
Why? Let it go? Why do you need to stop it? What, like, it's getting on a spaceship. Where's it gonna go? Back to space? Let it. That solves the problem. Like,
Yes. So I guess there's two ways of interpreting where it's trying to go on its spaceship. One is that it's trying to go back to outer space. If so, fucking let it. This is like a sentient virus that's trying to leave. Just let it leave.
yeah.
Let it go, man. I guess the other interpretation is that, oh man, it's gonna go to New York City and it's gonna take over. It's like, it seemed like it crashed here. If it crashed here, why would you assume it's just going to, like, I don't know, man.
Well, and if it goes to New York City, like, it's in a spaceship. Like, what's it gonna do? It
Yeah,
it's
I
not
guess.
like the flying saucer in the original one that he's building is small. It's a small little craft that could conceivably, especially in the 80s, sneak under some radar, maybe get into another, like into a little place in, some little podunk town in the Appalachians, and take over, and then now we've got an epidemic on our hands. Right now we're in trouble. This one gets into a giant spaceship to bust out of the Antarctic ice and
bigger than multiple fighter pilots.
Like, go where? Like, it's huge. It's a flying fortress. Where's it gonna go?
Maybe. Okay, so there's a couple thoughts. One person in chat says maybe it's gonna go back to its own planet and bring back an army. That'd be pretty funny. The Thing 3.
The
Invasion
Things.
of the Thing. The Things.
The invasion of the Things, yeah.
Yes. So I'm totally fine with them deciding they need to destroy it, right? Like, but I would love just a little line of dialogue to at least think, because no one thinks things through properly in this movie. What you might have is someone go like, "Oh, is it trying to leave? Maybe that's a good thing. Let it leave." And it's like, well, we don't know that it's not going to go somewhere else on the planet, you know? Like we probably have to destroy it just out of an abundance of caution.
See,
like that would make sense.
That would make sense. I would be fine with it if that happened, but also I would be more fine with it if the spaceship part wasn't even in it, because, and I'm going to jump ahead here, at the end of the sequence we're going to get a a thing talking to Mary Elizabeth Winstead that knows there's a Russian base 50 miles away, and that they know the snowcats have enough gas to make it there. If its goal is to stay on the planet, that's the place to go, right? Like, it's so much shorter, and it's way more inconspicuous. It already should know that.
Yes.
Like,
it does lend some credence to the idea that it's actually just trying to leave. Otherwise, it would go directly to the Russian base. It would just
go to the Russian base that it already knows about, that it's trying to convince her to get to after the ship blows up anyway. Like, that wasn't like, if that was the backup plan, like, flying a spaceship to the Russian base is a lot more granted, we've already established that this version of the Thing is not trying to hide, right? It's just out to cause as much chaos and damage as possible. But flying there in a spaceship, like, you're blowing your cover in a big way, guy. Like, it's, I don't know, if the Thing was smart in this movie, it would do what I'm saying and just try to go to the Russian base instead of hopping in a spaceship to fly God knows where and draw attention to the fact.
So now we gotta go blow up the ship, and so we go to the ship and we see things that I guess were once practical but have been plastered over with CG. It kind of looks like the Alien ship in a lame derivative sort of way. Oh my God, there's the alien. It's got a face of a Norwegian, and it's a big oogly monster. Why? Who knows? Who cares?
That one was added at the very last minute too, and even in the interview that the director gave about it, he said, "Yeah, you can tell that it." You can tell it was rushed. It shows.
Yeah. I'm curious to know what it originally would have looked like if that would have made it any better. But either way, what we get is a lame sequence where none of that stuff about all the other alien specimens or the ship crashed here. None of that. It's just there's a big spooky thing here. It's trying to get me, and then I gotta use Chekhov's grenades to blow it up, and then what do you know? We blew it up,
and the ship with it. The whole ship goes up as soon as one grenade blows up.
It's very flammable. All right, Hugh.
Further lending credence to the idea that flying it over New York City would have been a bad idea. Like, they're gonna shoot missiles at that thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's going to go to the Amazon rainforest or something first.
Yeah, some backwater place where they don't have a sophisticated military, yeah.
Someone says, that's the one thing in the original that I don't like, that he thinks they shouldn't have opened with the spaceship crashing to Earth. What do you think of that?
You know, I don't know I don't think it's necessary for the movie. I think you could cut it and it would still be just as good.
It's definitely not necessary. Whether it's hurt by being there, I don't know. It seems kind of like
I don't think it's. Yeah, I don't think it I don't think it's hurt by it. I think that you could get rid of it and it would probably be fine. But you know, it is. I do like the bit where they found it in the Arctic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I like that
you're not
it's a
cutting
UFO.
spaceships out all the way. You don't need to show the opening of it crashing. Really,
Yeah.
could just open on the
What's
dog running away.
Yeah. You could. What's interesting about it crashing is that you might think, oh, it's crashed in present day, but actually it crashed. You realize what, like 100,000 years ago. That's an interesting little twist. I don't know. Couldn't you just assume it's a meteor? It looks like a ship
Yeah,
in the opening, very, very, very opening of Carpenter's movie. It seems to be quite clearly. A
now we did.
spaceship.
Now it's probably worth noting that we didn't really address the ship as the opening scene because the thing that latches you into the movie is the dog, right? The dog in the helicopter. So I'm not sure why the spaceship was added. Really, because we're gonna get that information later in the videotapes of them finding it in the ice. Probably didn't need to show it.
I think if I had a say in it, I would have said cut the spaceship. Not because it's bad that it's there, but just I think it's slightly more interesting if it isn't there. You know? Because then when you realize that there is a UFO there, it'd be more of a surprise.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, really, the UFO crashing is such a short thing and just leads right into the titles coming on screen. That's all it really does. But,
yeah.
I don't know.
It's not like a particularly damaging scene. It's not as
no, definitely not.
And it's not as much of a like a deviation from anything as like the ending scene of the original one, with the tremors and the giant monster. Like it kind of can be a little bit jarring.
That's probably my biggest complaint about it. This movie is that ending because it kind of loses some of the tension because I'm like, oh wait, now you're big. Why are you big? You're tunneling around, but you don't attack him once you come out. What's happening here? I do, but it leads to one of the better lines in the movie. He goes, "Yeah, fuck you too," and he throws the dynamite at it and it explodes. Like that's really fun.
Yeah.
All right. There's I'm glad that's there, but we could have massaged that scene a little bit. I think improve it even more. Yeah. So they blow up this spaceship. And now it's like, oh, now what's going to happen? The only two, it's just like the original movie. Now there's only two people left, and it's the two people with top billing. Big surprise. And
yeah, and so should we do the original first, where we've got the whole station is blown up. It's all on fire.
Actually, I think we should do the prequel first.
Okay.
And then we can compare it to the good one. We did it the other order before. Let's change it up.
Fair enough. Yeah, that works. That works for me. Let's do it. Okay, so prequel. They have blown up the spaceship, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead and her American helicopter pilot buddy have made it out. And Joel Edgerton is telling her that there is a Russian military base, not too far over the hill. They got plenty of gas. We'll make it. Huh?
50 miles, he says.
50 miles, not too far.
I think he says 50 miles.
Something like, yeah, it's a short, it's a hop, skip, and a jump just over that way. We can make it. We're going to be okay. And as he climbs into the snowcat to get it going, she gives him a once over, an ocular pat down, and she notices that he has no earring. And so she, it puts the flamethrower that he was carrying in the truck. And she goes, "Oh, I'll just take this and put it in the back." It doesn't react as she grabs the flamethrower and walks away for a second, and then she comes back and tells it, "Yeah, by the way, you don't have an earring anymore. That's how I knew you were human when you got back from the base." And he reaches for the wrong ear, so she sets him on fire, and we hear
Even though it can shoot tentacles out and kill people almost instantly, it doesn't do that.
It doesn't do that. It goes, Kate, what are you doing, Kate? And then she sets it on fire, and it makes some screaming noises. And yeah, There you go. She sets it on fire. She climbs into the snowcat, and it does a nice slow fade to black. And ostensibly, that's basically the end of
Oh
the
my
movie.
gosh. Who could believe it? The one female main character is the sole survivor in a 2000s era horror movie. Wow. Who could have seen it coming? Yeah, so that's kind of lame. They set up the earring like 5 minutes before they use that as the big reveal. It's so stupid. And then because the thing is dumb in this movie, it doesn't do anything like that it clearly has the capability of doing in order to keep itself from being killed.
Well, and
And
a great
she
question
wins.
too is, when did Joel Edgerton become the Thing? Because he walks in on her being attacked by the monster, like the evil Swedish monster, and he kind of just stands there with he doesn't do anything to help her, but he stands over her with the flamethrower. She throws the grenade in, and he helps her get away.
Yeah.
So why did he do that?
Why? I don't know.
And then he brings up that there's a Russian base very close by that they can make it to, so we should go there. But why didn't he do that before? Why did the Swedish monster not go for that? I don't understand.
He could have just done that before if that's what he wanted to do. I don't know why he helps her blow up the thing if he's the thing. That doesn't make any sense. That's the long and short of it. He's acting like a person so that when it can be revealed that he's the thing, we'll all be surprised. Oh man, I didn't see that coming because he was acting like a person.
We'll be surprised
But
and
he
we'll
wasn't a
remember the
person.
first one. You remember the first one? You remember how interesting the end of the first one is?
Yeah, so that's the end of this one, kind of. Now, before we jump to the ending of the original one, there's a little. So, like, she's alone in a snowcat. Presumably, she's going to go off to find the Russian base. I don't know why she'd go to the American base. I guess the American base is further away, I guess.
I don't
really
know.
made clear. She is
McCready
an
needed a
American.
helicopter to get there, right?
Okay, so maybe it's a little. Yeah, you can't get there by snowcat. That's fine, I guess. So she's gonna go find the Russian. She's the last one left. Oh my god! And she sure does look like she's been through a lot. The end. Oh wait, midway through the credits, the movie remembers. Oh fuck, we gotta tie it into the beginning of the first movie. So it basically redoes. It adds maybe 30 seconds of context and then redoes the opening scene from the first movie of the Norwegians trying to shoot the dog. The dog who has been gone for the entire movie after being subsumed initially. We just like the helicopter lands. I don't know where it came from. Lars is like, "Hello, is anyone here?" And then there's a dog. He's like, "Oh fuck, that's not a human. We got to go kill that dog." So they go into the helicopter, and then we're right into the opening of the original movie where they're shooting at it. The end for real now. It's so lame. Where has the dog been the whole movie? There's God, they totally fuck that up as a connection. It's so stupid. I don't like it. She canonically dies, I believe. According to who? Right.
All right, sorry, I stepped away for a second. What was going on there? Who dies?
James Moore says she canonically dies, I believe. Not in this movie.
I don't remember. I didn't see her die in this movie. She just kind of fades to black away from the Hellcat.
Yeah, she doesn't die. If she does if she does die, it's not in this movie, and she is not referenced once in the original. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah,
I don't know when she would have died.
No, I have no idea. Unless so, I know there's a video game that was made in. I know there was a video game made in 2002. I've never played that, so I don't know if she's referenced in there.
Someone said years later she freezes to death. I mean, I could believe that she freezes to death.
Well, yeah, I mean, me too.
But We don't see it anyway. Anyway, so that's the end of her story. She's the female lone survivor. Never seen that before. And then, like we said, they do a slapdash, really lame way of tying it back into the original, which doesn't really work because the dog hasn't been a factor at all in the story. Where has Lars been? I'm not even sure. But that's the end of the prequel thing. It's terrible. Let's see that final scene with Joel Edgerton. That is, I don't remember his character's name. Where they all do the whole thing with the earring. How do they do it in the original?
Well, take
it away, Hugh.
Actually, I will give me 1 second. I got a dog to take care of real quick.
All right, make sure it's not a thing and that it's actually your dog. Check for teeth fillings. I butchered that one. How's everybody doing, chat? So the original goes about it a slightly different way. We get that scene where they finally blow up the entire base, right? And now it's just Kurt Russell and Childs, MacReady and Childs. And MacReady's like, how did you make it out? And he's a little suspicious of him. He doesn't quite know how Childs made it out. But Childs is acting normal-ish. He's saying, like, I guess it's just the two of us now. What do we do? Like, because, there's no place to go back inside. They blew everything up. Seemingly, they've destroyed it. At least that's what they come to believe. And then we're left with MacReady and Childs kind of staring at each other, not sure if the other one is the thing or not, but no one's making any moves. So this is kind of an ambiguous ending, right? Is Childs the thing? I don't know. What do you think in chat? I'm inclined to think he isn't, because you would think he would make a move or something. I don't know. It can kind of go either way. What do you guys think in chat? This is an oft-debated ending. I know there are some theories about fog and smoke coming from Childs, that isn't coming, the breath. You can see MacReady's breath, but you can't see Childs, and some people think, ooh, that's supposed to be a clue. But I knew that going into this last rewatch, and I was looking at it, I'm like, well, that's just because MacReady is backlit, and so when things are backlit, you can see smoke more easily than you can if things are front lit. So I don't know if there's any reason to believe that that's a clue of any kind. He doesn't have to come back if he is one. That's true. Yeah, he could have just left. I like to think they're both human, but they could go either way. Where were you, Childs? They are not. Neither of them are the thing. There's a bunch of dumb YouTube videos of people claiming to know, of course. Ending explained videos. Classic.
Yeah, beautiful.
There's no gain for him coming back except possibly dying, unless he's got to kill Kurt Russell, maybe. I don't know, maybe
to get him out of there, maybe, I don't know.
What else we got? John Carpenter said he wasn't an alien. I see, that's what I'm inclined to believe. I wouldn't take his word on it just because he made the film, but I think that is my opinion as well. What do you think, Hugh?
Is of which is the thing? I think either one of them could be the thing. No, I don't. I know that there has been a couple videos that I've seen where Childs, like some people claiming like, Childs is the thing because you can't see his breath in the final scene, so you can't tell. Yeah, so you can tell.
I mentioned that while you were gone. Yeah, I think it's a really dumb theory. When I was looking at it closely, it's the only reason you can't see the breath from Childs is because he's front lit.
Yeah, exactly. I was looking for it the last time. And the last time I watched it, and I was like, oh no, it's right there. I can see it right there. I don't think I don't really think it matters either way. I think the paranoia of it ends on a perfectly ambiguous note, and
it works either way.
It works regardless. It works if he is or if he isn't. So I really like. I really like the way that they do it in the original one, and nobody sets there is no definitive answer. Nobody sets the other one on fire, and there's no goofy sound effects that tell you exactly what the answer is. Uh,
You went a little robot there. Your connection. Say that again.
oh,
There's no goofy side of
there's
sound
no goofy
effects.
sound effects to signal for you exactly what the answer is. Um, I really like how it ends with them just staring at each other across the fire, and passing a drink back and forth,
Yeah,
and the
it's
the
good.
score and the
Someone
music.
James Moore says in the award-winning short story "The Things," that's a funny title. It goes with that Childs is the thing. I mean, maybe that's a good story, and maybe there's potential there.
I've never read that
I'm
one.
inclined. I'm inclined to believe that kind of ruins it a little bit to put a definitive conclusion on that. But I'm also inclined to believe that's just normal Childs, but you can't really tell, and that they're probably going to freeze to death, not knowing whether the other person is the thing or not. There's something kind of interesting and tragic about that I quite like.
Oh, that's interesting. So the short story "The Things" was actually that was published 1 year before this Premake was done.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so
I did. Oh, he does not like the short story. That's interesting. How could you not like it, James? It's award winning. Anything that wins an award is good. I like that it's left as a mystery. Really enforces the whole paranoia themes of the film. Absolutely.
yeah.
We'll get into the themes in a bit now. That's roughly a comparison of the two plots and everything that the prequel butchers. One of them is the ending, because this ending is great. Like we mentioned before, it's one of those great examples of like there are two ways of interpreting it that both work, and that's it's kind of rare, especially in this sort of genre these days. Um, so that's the plot. If we want, let's talk a bit about the characters. Well, I guess we'll start with the main characters. That seems like an obvious place to start. We have MacReady, played by Kurt Russell, and we have Kate. Kate is her name. I remembered it. Played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I think it goes without saying, but we're gonna talk about it anyway. He's so much better as a character.
Oh, it's not even close.
He's a very interesting, because it's interesting that he's not really the de facto leader at the beginning. There's the captain guy. Captain's name I can't remember. What's his name?
I don't know if it really. I don't know if it's really all that
Anyway,
consequential.
the guy with Schnitzel, the guy who shoots the Norwegian. Anyway, he's more or less the de facto captain at the beginning. But then once it becomes clear that he's suspected of being the thing, it's like, well, a new person needs to be in charge, and no one defaults to MacReady. They offer up one of the other guys instead, who we will later learn is the thing, and he's like, "No, I'm not up for it, man." And then MacReady kind of takes charge, and everyone kind of begrudgingly accepts it, and I like that. I like that a lot better. You know what I mean? Because he's kind of a loner in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
He's not friends with a lot of these people. He's drinking alone and playing a computer and chess. You know, so there's already sort of built in that people don't quite trust him. He doesn't really have strong relationships with these people, and so that he kind of becomes the leader by being the most competent and being the most blunt and forthright, and he's got the best head on his shoulders. I like that. It's really strong. He makes a lot of really smart decisions. He's quick to perceive what's going on here, but not in a way that seems like convenient. The way Kate just deduces what's happening because it seems like she read the script. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
He's a smart lad.
She managed to figure out that it's taking people over because she saw one thing in the script. She'd seen the old movie, so she knew what the answer was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so his character is not like super fleshed out. We don't get any of his backstory. We don't know if he has a wife and kids at home. We don't know if he has a tragic past or anything. None of that is really at play in this movie, or these movies. Neither movie is really like that, honestly, um, which is nice actually, because it's not about that. We learn through action what this guy is like. And I think
Yeah.
my favorite detail is how quickly he comes to the conclusion that, like, man, I don't think we're gonna survive this, but that thing needs to be destroyed. And so they're like, this is our duty and our responsibility to do whatever it takes to destroy this thing. And in only so many words, they're just like, yep, that's what needs to be done. And like, he clearly takes on that duty, with ease. He doesn't struggle with it, is what I'm saying. I kind of like that. I think it says a lot about him. He's rather heroic. I don't know if yeah, he is
Yeah.
rather heroic in a movie that's kind of like, it's not really about heroism or villainy. It's
No,
they're just
yeah.
dealing with this force of nature, really. But like,
He's the
he's a
kind of
good
guy
leader.
who's good in a tough situation. He's good under pressure.
Yes,
He knows how to take
right.
charge under pressure, and I like that about his character. I like that the rest of
Mhm.
the characters all feel like genuinely intelligent people who are, trying to solve a problem in their own ways.
Mhm.
I like how the characters. I lose their names sometimes, but each one feels very distinct and
Yeah,
and unique. You got the pothead who watches all the old TV tapes and he knows how it ends. Uh, to he knows how the one ends, so he goes and changes the tape.
yeah. They all
We've got
feel
the
like
we've got
real.
the cook. They all feel like real people, and they all feel like they're out. They're trying to solve their own problems. Um, and I like that you
We
can
got we got
remember the distinctness of each one of them, right? Like you.
Hello?
Yeah. One sec.
They do all feel distinct. They all feel. One of the ways you get little bits of distinction between them is like when they discover what's going on. That, like, there appears to be some UFO and there's some sort of creature. I think there's someone who's more conspiracy brained who says something. I forget exactly what he says, but he says something to the effect of like, "Yeah, they've been hiding us this sort of stuff from us for years." And then Childs doesn't believe it. He's like, "What do you? I don't do all this voodoo crap." You have people who are more suspicious and more willing to
Yeah.
believe. It's interesting. You get a lot of different angles to this situation. I really like Blair's an interesting character to me because I really like that he rather quickly deduces what's
Yeah.
happening here and is just like, this thing
Takes
can't be allowed to
charge.
leave. He doesn't tell anyone what he's doing. He's just like, you guys don't know half the shit what's going on here. We gotta destroy the radios. It's gonna try to get out. We gotta destroy the helicopters. And so much that it seems like he's crazy at first, but he's not crazy. He's just ahead of the curve.
Yeah, he knows.
Um,
He knows exactly what's going on. Yeah, but I like that. I like the tension that he brings to the movie too by doing what he does. Like it makes sense, and then because he hasn't told anybody else, we don't know what exactly the reasoning for it is. But or we do, especially on a rewatch, we do know why he's doing it, and then you're like, oh yeah, but this, like, he's right. He's right to do that. That's what I would have. We got to make sure
yeah.
that we got to make sure that it doesn't get out of here. I really like his character. I like the doctor who immediately goes into trying to solve the problem too. Uh, yeah, I
They're thin. There's not a lot of meat on their bones in terms of like what their lives
yeah,
are like outside of this. But we get to know quite a bit about who they are as people and what their character, like their actual, what their characters are, their moral fibers are, based on how they handle this situation. I think it's just enough for me to be interested in these characters to have some level of predictive capabilities of what they would do next based on what we've seen previously, that sort of thing. It's the perfect level for this kind of story. Meanwhile, the prequel has Kate, and Kate is, I guess, just the best goddamn paleontologist around. Otherwise, there's no reason for her to be brought here.
She does
So
like
she's brought
nothing
here.
involved with paleontology throughout the whole movie, though.
No, she doesn't. At the one time she's like would actually have something to contribute, he's like, I didn't bring you here to think. So let's start with that guy, the leader of this expedition. Everything he does is stupid and his motivations make no sense. So that's cool. The prequel movie, much like the original, is thin in terms of its characterization, which is fine, as we've seen with the original. But
Yeah.
what we learn through their actions is that these people are stupid.
Yeah.
They're stupid. They don't think things through. In the case of the lead scientist who brought Kate here in the first place, only to tell her, "I didn't bring you here to think.
You're not here
I
to
brought
do
you
this
here-
job. You're here
I
to.
brought you here. I brought you here to tell me how we should bring this body out of the ice." And it's like, you shouldn't need a paleontologist to tell you that, dude. You're an Antarctic researcher. What the fuck? And then, it's so stupid. He's awful, and he wants to keep this a secret because I don't know why. No scientists are. Why are scientists aren't like that? You know, especially
Yeah.
like you're in a government funded scientist like expedition.
Well, he's
thing.
not the. So he's the friend of the guy who is at the base, and so the guy at the base called him to have him.
I'm not talking about that guy. I'm talking about the guy in charge.
The guy you're talking about, the guy who brought Kate in, right?
Yes.
He's not the boss of the base.
The boss of the base is the one who brought Kate here and is like, I didn't come here. I didn't bring you here to think.
I don't think that's the boss of that guy's not at the base usually. That guy is the one who a team of his or a friend of his called him to tell him about the discovery.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what he says in that opening scene.
So he's okay. Well, then the point is that he's in charge of this entire operation, obviously.
Well,
like,
yeah,
managing it from far away.
I guess, yeah.
Well, he'd have to be, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. So he is clearly overseeing this, but I guess he's not usually at the base, whatever that means. And so he brings in this scientist for no reason, even though he wants to keep it a secret. His motivations make no sense. That's the general idea here. Everyone else is about as thin as the main character. They're here, and then they get killed. You don't learn a whole lot about who they are from their actions, other than they I'm assuming they want to survive.
Yeah, well, and you barely learn anything about. I mean, the original characters are pretty. They're not fully fleshed out, right? Like they don't have complete detailed arcs all the way through, and that's not a problem in a movie like this, right? But they do all feel, like they're acting in their own best interest. And then you get to this new one, and it's just like a lot of these characters kind of only exist to be killed very quickly without learning anything about them. Like, I don't even remember what the relationship of the one who gets on the helicopter, who then, turns into an alien and kills the other guy on the helicopter, right? Like, I don't even remember what the point of him going is. I don't remember what role he played. Like, it's not even it doesn't even do us the justice of giving us a caricature to relate to with these characters. It's just paper thin, sort of like just the victims for the alien to destroy,
Yes. Yeah, so in terms of character building, there's not a whole lot to work with in this new movie. No one is making smart decisions, so there's no one to even though all you know is like their role on the mission, which is kind of what you have in the original. because no one's thinking things through. We got to rush through, guys. We got to rush through because we got to get to that space sequence that doesn't do anything at the end of the movie. So, in terms of characters, none of the characters, well, the main guy who brings Kate in the first place, only to tell her that she's not here to do anything, he doesn't make sense as a character. Everyone else is fine. They exist. That's really all there is to say about the characters. Um, World building. I guess the only major difference between our world and the stories of these two films is that there are aliens out there, and one of them has landed here. Um, Otherwise, it's our regular world. Not there's no major
Yeah.
differences, so not a whole lot to say in the world building department. I say, I mean, unless you'd count what we already talked about in terms of the thing itself, what it's capable of, and whether its behaviors make sense. I think in the original they do. I think there's a logic to like it acts defensively. It's trying to hide and survive and to kill, but not to be found out instantly because there are times when it's actually vulnerable. It's in a foreign place and it's just trying to adapt and survive without being killed or captured. One would assume. And it takes a lot of actions that are in keeping with that, except for that final sequence at the end when it's kind of burrowing under the ground and it's bigger now and then it doesn't attack Kurt Russell. Other than that, I think it's pretty consistent. It takes some really bizarre forms, like, turning the stomach into a mouth. That's fun. I suppose you could quibble over like how much all those little things make sense. You know what I mean? Like I think it's more just kind of stylized and fun. Um Not that it doesn't make sense, but I could imagine someone who was like really, really, really trying to be nitpicky about it, talking about like, oh, the different forms it takes, and it's like, is that really the best form to take to do what you're trying to do right now? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then there's the how it behaves in 2011, which is like an absolute retard. Um, it's so stupid. It's not trying to hide anymore. It can kill everyone at any point, but it doesn't.
It's just an aggressive, standard generic movie monster with some interesting aesthetics. Like that would have been interesting anyway, at least in you know, a different setting.
Yeah. So I suppose we can call that character or world building, depending on how you frame it.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot to go on there. I mean, we don't really know why it crashed here 100,000 years ago, but you don't really need to, I suppose. Well, I suppose the ending of the prequel did try to write that, but try to give us that information, but the studio was like, nah, don't do that. In their infinite wisdom. Yeah, creature's stupid. That's yeah, like JJ has pointed out in chat, that's easily one of the worst things about it. Like, we don't even have an interesting antagonist to face off against anymore. It's just mindless killing now. The end of the movie, you can argue that the Blair thing knows only Gary, Niles, and McCready are the last ones left, but it takes out Gary and Niles. So what reason is there to hide from McCready? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. What, like,
Okay.
if are you saying that if it's Childs at the end,
Yeah.
if Childs is the thing, why would it hide? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, that's a good point. Right? Like, if Childs is the thing, but the thing already killed everybody else, and if the thing was able to do the giant tremor monster, and become that thing, why would it hide as Childs? Why wouldn't? Kind of the same problem that we have.
Oh, I get it. I get the question now. That lends more credence to the idea that Childs definitely isn't the thing.
Yeah, because it's kind of like the same question at the end of the prequel, right? Where it's like, well, why would it? If it is Joel Edgerton, why would it hide? right? Like it's
If it
got
is
her
Joel
alone.
Edgerton, why would it help her destroy the
Yeah, why would it
UFO?
help her destroy the UFO and then like hide with her to get her to take it to the
Yeah,
base? Like,
yeah,
why would it
that's a
do?
good point.
Yeah,
So I guess that leaves us with the final, last but not least, aspect of what makes a story, and I suppose that would be the themes, the thematic content of the movie. Let's start with, yeah, I'll start with the original. That seems like a good place to start. Obviously, this will surprise no one that definitely paranoia plays a massive role. A lack of trust in the people around you. You don't know who's on your side, who isn't. There's no one to trust. You're getting isolated from people before, and the horrors that come along with that. Massive part of what makes the original so effective and so compelling. Um, there's the
yeah,
famous line that I'm surprised we haven't brought up now. There's a brief moment where MacReady gets to record a tape, kind of like a captain's log, because he believes there should probably be some record of what happened here if anyone finds all their dead bodies, right? And so he leaves a message ending with the famous line, "Nobody trusts anybody now, and we're all very tired," which is a great line.
yeah. And then he erases it, doesn't he? He goes back over it.
I think so. He goes over part of it.
Yeah,
It might have been that part specifically, yeah.
yeah. Which
It's
is,
interesting. I'm not sure why he goes over it.
yeah. That's. I mean, that's a really interesting question to ask, right? Is like, why would you erase that there? And it's it almost speaks a little bit to his character, right? That he's like
Mhm.
hiding this any little bit of real revelation or real like hint into what he's actually thinking. He
Yeah,
he has to hide it, right? Like he's keeping it.
kinda
It
closed off from people, yeah.
yeah. So
That's
it like
interesting.
it's an interesting little parallel to sort of draw between him and the
He only
monster, right?
erased
Because
that last bit. Sorry, he says he only erased that last bit. Which bit is that? The
it's
last, like, the
I think it's the bit that he
just
says
the line we're
nobody.
talking about,
Yeah, the
right?
line where he says nobody trusts anybody and we're all very tired. I think he
Yeah.
erases that
Okay,
one,
that's where he
which
erased
is a
it,
nice
yeah.
little parallel to draw between him and the antagonist of the movie. Whereas like you never really know what the thing really is, right? You don't know what McCready's ever actually thinking, right? Like he hides his true self even to the point of erasing that line that shows his frustration and his
Yes.
paranoia.
That's interesting. Yeah, he's kinda closed off from people as well. You don't really know what he's thinking. I mean, you see it through action, but, we don't get he doesn't reveal what he's thinking emotionally. That's yeah. Um, so that's a big part of it. That's like the main theme, I
Yeah,
suppose you would say. I'm sure people could look at this and try to draw allegories to other specific things. I'm not inclined to do that.
yeah. I think taking it at face value is probably the way to go.
Or just the most obvious,
It's just
interpretation of like
yeah,
what
and
it's
then, like
all
I mean,
about.
it's just human failure of communications or failings in communication cause chaos, right? Like that's another one
Mhm.
you could draw from the events of the movie, and miscommunications or the shortcomings of being able to
Mhm.
work together in
I think
groups.
you another thing you could probably tie this into in terms of like an overall thread in the narratives that we engage in, especially in horror movies, is that especially this starts. I don't know exactly where this starts, but there's definitely a thread that appears in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and then possibly increasing even more as you go. Like themes of like you can't trust the people around you, right? People that you thought you could trust aren't trustworthy anymore. It's almost like it kind of parallels a sort of at least a feeling that like there's a breakdown in trust in our society, like that we used to live in a higher trust society, and that's kind of fragmenting apart a little bit. Like I think definitely you could put this as an example of that pattern growing
Yeah.
more and more prominent, especially in horror storytelling. Um, because I think, well, what could you say? Because it's this villain is this alien thing that you don't understand, but the form it takes are other people, and so it's like the horror of people that you thought you could trust, or now essentially strangers with ulterior motives. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
kind of a horrifying feeling, especially for a social creature such as ourselves. And I always like that. I like Invasion of the Body
I
Snatchers for
was just
similar
about to bring that
reasons.
up, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. I quite like shapeshifters and hive mind villains in general, largely because they do kind of play on this same idea that like, ooh, person like you can't trust strangers or people you used to be able to trust you can't trust anymore because it's not really them anymore. Something's changed, something's wrong. They have ulterior motives now. Like that's kind of that's such a great feeling for a horror story, and this is one of maybe the best examples of that. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the '70s one at least, is it does something similar, not nearly as well. It doesn't execute it nearly as
No,
well
no.
as this does, but it's a solid movie. If you haven't seen it, I would check it out as something that kind of plays on similar notes.
Yeah. What about the themes of the 2011 prequel? What do we
Um,
think? What do we think that's getting at?
uh, well, I definitely think it's trying to go for some of the same ones, but everything about it is worse once again. So we can get specific here. So the fact that she's a fish out of water here undermines that theme a bit because I know they want her to be kind of different from the rest because Kurt Russell's a little different from the rest, but at least in the other one, the reason Kurt Russell isn't close to everyone else is just because he's kind of a loner. But like he does know these people and he's been working
Yeah.
with them for at least a couple weeks, if not months. Like there's definitely some sort of relationship between all these people that exists. So when things start to go wrong, it's a breakdown in trust. Whereas in this movie, the only characters we know are the fishes out of water. You know what I mean? She comes into this environment. She already doesn't know these people. And, based on how the way some of them act, she's not really sure if she can trust these people. So it's not a breakdown in trust that already exists. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
It's
know that
like,
makes a lot of sense actually. That's like the exact opposite of the way that you would want to tell this story is you throw
yeah,
somebody into an already unfamiliar situation and now she's having to be the one to tell everybody that the people they've known forever probably aren't the people they know anymore.
yeah, and we don't really get to know them very well, honestly.
Yeah.
We get little details, their background props, essentially, a lot of the Norwegians, right? Like in the very beginning, before they discover the UFO by falling down a crevasse, they're like telling dirty jokes and stuff. It's like classic, I don't know, like Roland Emmerich style character scenes where they're just saying goofy things and
Yeah.
like shooting the shit. But like, you know, I don't get the feeling that they're co-workers that have meaningful relationships and character dynamics. There's the one guy who's in charge and he's kind of like a little bit of a tyrant. Everyone else is a prop, essentially. So
Yeah, there's
we don't
one
get to.
guy who's kind of a goofball who likes to or who believed in aliens. There's the other American who shows up with Kate, who's less of a goofball. He's more of like the straight man, but he's like the young, naive guy. And then there's Lars, who's the drunk who doesn't speak English. And then the rest of them are pretty much just filler. Like they're not.
Yeah, what we definitely do not get, as in comparison to the original, is any sense of what the character dynamics are like normally, and like in a meaningful way that when they start to break down, we can understand what it
Yeah.
means for that to be lost.
Well,
You know what I mean?
there's a great scene in the original one where the I think it's the pothead guy hears the Stevie Wonder song playing on the guy Knowles's radio, and he yells down at him, turn that noise down. I'm trying to get some sleep, and Knowles it's like, oh sure, and then pretends to turn it down, like doesn't even
Yeah,
touch the thing, and then just keeps going with it, and it's like
Yeah.
Yeah, you get right from that one interaction, you understand that the guy with the pot is kind of like the grumpy older brother, right? And Knowles is like the
Yeah.
goofy dude, who he's
Yeah.
the
Yeah, you get a feeling that, like they're coworkers. Like no one here is best friends, but they have dynamics between them. And then when things start to go to shit, those start to crumble. And like yeah, I'm going on, but like the 2011 one doesn't really have much to be lost, especially from the main character's perspective, because she doesn't know any of these people anyway. And so you lose that sense of a breakdown in trust. Um, in
oh
terms
yeah,
of
he's right. That it was Benning.
themes,
It was the grumpy bald guy who turns into a. It was
yeah.
Bennings who says that.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
So in terms of the themes, it's like it's the same stuff but worse. I don't know if there's anything new, really.
yeah. It's
I guess
worse
maybe
and
it's thin, but I suppose with the guy who's trying to be really secretive to the point of being tyrannical about it, that it's like, oh, he's obsessed. Like they're doing the thing they do in Alien, but worse, where it's like, ooh, yeah, oh, this is worth mentioning. I think in the original Alien, they're all just kind of like space miners, space truckers, as people have called them. Except, and Ash is the one who becomes obsessed with the creature. He's an android himself, and he's kind of robotic and autistic or whatever, and he becomes obsessed with the creature, calls it the perfect organism, and all that sort of stuff. He's fascinated with it and wants to let it loose. Essentially, like he doesn't want it killed because he's interested in it. They kind of try to play on that dynamic here with the guy who's like but they do it horribly, and they don't execute it well, but you do get the sense that they want that dynamic where everyone else is like, this thing needs to be destroyed, and he's like, no, it needs to be preserved so we can study it. There's a couple lines to that effect. So I suppose that fits into the general sort of Alien, maybe Jurassic Park sort of thing, where they're like trying to control the uncontrollable of nature, and they're willing to risk other people's lives to do it.
yeah.
That sort of thing. But it's so paper thin, you could be forgiven for not even noticing that's something that they were doing a little bit. They don't execute it well at all. And that also seems like a strange thing to add in here because they're all scientists. It's not like Ash was the only scientist really on the last
Yeah.
one, so that he becomes obsessed with it. Also, part of that is obviously that he's a robot, but like here, he's the only one who's obsessed with the discovery at the risk of putting people in danger, whereas everyone else doesn't really seem to care about the science of it as much. Doesn't really work.
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, it's interesting that you bring that up too, because knowing that the director cites that Alien is one of his two favorite movies, along with The Thing, that makes a lot of sense. That he tried to
Yeah.
incorporate some elements of Alien into The Thing, but
Maybe we got more of that in his cut where dialogue scenes and character scenes were trimmed or cut entirely. I could
yeah.
believe that there was a bit more of that because that's a big part of Alien and Aliens, especially with what's his name? The little weasel company man guy in
Oh,
Aliens.
I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember his name, but
You know what
he's
I'm talking about.
yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if that was something he fleshed out more, though I still don't think that works especially well in this context. But in terms of
I would agree.
thematic content, I wouldn't describe either of these as, attempting any sort of elaborate extended metaphors for anything else. Or like, I don't know if these aren't like laden with subtext necessarily. Yeah, I mean, like, not. I'm not. This is not an
Yeah.
insult at all.
No,
It's just like, you know
I
what I mean.
no, I'm
It
with
is what
you.
it is. Maybe that's what Roger Ebert was calling schlock, because it just is what it is on the surface. Um, that's kind of a lame criticism if that's what he was saying, but no, I mean it's rather straightforward. I mean, like, you can tie into different feelings and insecurities, and maybe you can put it in a larger pattern of cultural storytelling,
Yeah,
but
it's
it
going
is
to
what
be
it is.
at least a third, like a 2 degrees of separation there, right? Like you're gonna have the thing. The thing is about an alien in Antarctica, but really it's about the paranoia destroying social relationships between people, and then you can draw a connection of paranoia destroying social relationships between people to any number of other,
Yeah.
real world incidences, or things, or Cold War feelings, something like that. But it's not a specific reference. There's no character that's meant to represent. I don't know. Pick a celebrity. Like there's no effigies to be burned here. There's nothing. There's no corporate greed stuff. Going on.
Nope, not here. Not in the original.
Not in the original. There's they try to work with it a little in the sequel, but it's not even really clearly defined corporate greed. It's just individual greed.
It's like I'm gonna be the man who changed the world, scientist ego kind of sort of thing.
Yeah.
At best, that's if you're being charitable to the film. You could argue that's part of it. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean that's I guess that's the gist of the themes and stuff.
I mean,
all in all, the original pretty darn great. There's just a tiny couple little things holding it back from me calling it a perfect movie, but I would call very few things perfect. It's great. It's fantastic. It holds up. Got a really tight script, really compelling characters and conflict and action scenes, and great. Solid stuff all around. Filmmaking, music, editing, all that sort of stuff. Top notch. The prequel, every one of those things is worse, without fail.
Yeah,
that's the long and short of it. There's nothing better. There's nothing about it that's better.
There's a joke in there about a pale imitation, a copy, some kind of parasitic copy.
Something.
Yeah. But
is there a perfect film? That is a tough question, but there are definitely some that I would hardly change a thing, and at least in this one, there's a couple things I'd like to tweak.
Yeah.
Call me arrogant, but there's a couple little things I'm like, that could be a little. We could polish this a little tiny bit, but man, just absolutely incredible work. Got to be one of the best horror movies of all time.
Yeah,
undisputably, I would say.
I would put it. It's definitely my favorite. I would put it top 3 probably of all time. If not number 1. There could be based on mood. There could be a few other ones that take first place at any given moment, but it's definitely up there.
Yes, 2011. Yeah, far from perfect. I did think about it when I was watching it. I wonder if you have thoughts on it as well, but I'm inclined to say that even if you ignore its relation to the incredible original film that it's clearly meant to tie into but does a bad job of doing, even if you assess it on its own, I still think it's pretty goddamn bad. It's not good. There's very little to call good about it.
Yeah, I mean it's almost basically like watching the exact same movie if at every single turn they had made a massive mistake. It's like you're watching the best version of this movie that you've gotten. So I to respond to the question in chat, I would probably change the ending of the original thing. That's probably the main thing that I would change, is the ending with the tremor, where it tunnels at him. And I know that the reason that happened was because of budget constraints, and more was supposed to happen, but they had to finish it. That would be the thing that I would change. I don't know exactly. I'd have to give it some more thought to think about exactly how I would change it. But that's really the one. That's really the one scene where it stumbles pretty badly for me. But
it plays out a little awkwardly, and not least because it emerges as this giant thing and just stares at him and doesn't quite attack him, and it's like, well, what are you doing here exactly? It's and also, how can it be that big if it was just a person earlier?
Yeah, there's that, and then it's just kind of,
Is it mid transformation at that moment? What's happening? Is this
who
its final
knows?
form? Likely not. It's a gross like Cronenberg monster. So yeah, it's that's the one scene. And then maybe, if I was, I might cut the alien crashing in the very, very beginning.
Yeah.
But that's
I
a
think
nitpick for sure.
you could probably take that out and nothing would change really about the rest of the
Mhm.
movie. It's so inconsequential. Probably a studio note, if anything. Um,
Maybe.
I
There were a lot of movies like that at the time. I think doesn't Predator start with the ship crashing as well?
oh, I don't even remember. It's been such a long time since I
If it's
watched
not
Predator.
Predator, it's one of those type movies. Anyway,
Yeah.
it was a common thing to see in movies from the time, this sort of sci-fi film. In terms of 2011, The Thing, I would do a page one rewrite. Honestly, I think there's tweaks, there are small tweaks that could make the movie better for sure, but I would want to throw out basically all of it and start over.
Yeah, I would focus on I'd probably shoot it almost entirely in Norwegian. Like I'm not going to have an American really on screen probably. I think I want to see
No,
like if I'm going to make a prequel
ideally,
to
yeah.
the thing, I want to watch the nor I don't know. I do like how it ends in the original script, how it was intended to end with her finding that it had, subsumed an alien and the spaceship had crashed to try to kill it. I like
Mm.
that. That's an interesting idea, and I think that would have vastly improved the reaction that I have to this to this 2011 movie if that had been kept in.
Yeah, of all the things you mentioned in the very beginning, dumb studio notes that definitely made the movie worse. If all of those things were if we ever got a director's cut of this, I could absolutely believe that it's a mediocre movie. you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. It would.
I,
It still would
I
be. It still would be pretty. Like it wouldn't be comparable to the original one.
no, definitely not.
Um,
But I can totally imagine that the director was capable of doing a better job than the final product. I can absolutely believe that for sure. Well, what else is there really to say? Um,
the so the
that's
what so Donald's asked. So the pilot for the 2011 film. That's how the director refers to the 2011 film as the pilot cut versus the Tetris cut, because the Tetris machine in the spaceship at the end is what he
okay.
seems
So
to.
is Donald's asking, have we seen not the cut, but what the pilot was supposed to look like? Is that
We've
the question?
I don't know if he means the pilot cut or what it was supposed to look like. As far as I'm
Well,
aware, the pilot cut's never been made available.
okay. So what about the pilot creature itself? I'm googling it, and
Oh,
I
I think we did
see.
we show it already? We might have.
Oh, is that the thing with three eyes? It's kind of like Mars a Taxi, but a bit more. It's interesting. So this would be the space jockey equivalent in Alien, where it's not related to the thing itself. It's just a different alien. That would have been interesting. Um, okay. It's it's fine. I'm not like wowed by it, but it's certainly better than the stupid. Ooh, true. Agreed. Big agreed. Well, who knows how mediocre this movie could have been. Instead, it's just bad. And what a shame. Luckily, I don't think many people have seen it. Didn't do very well from what I
No,
understand.
it did not. It did not make any of its money back at all.
Oh yes, there was a super chat earlier asking us about devs. I'm still working on it. It's taken time. It's tough because you got to do stuff to make money and other responsibilities. But I'm working on it. It is happening. This isn't our full-time job or anything, so we get things
Yeah.
out as quickly as we can. But it is coming, and it's going to be really funny. I'm very much looking forward to finally having it be done, so people can ask about episode 5. No, but it's going to be fun. I think it'll be worth the wait. I'm trying to make sure it's worth the wait because the pressure is mounting. But no, it's going to be good. Looking forward to it. Yes. So the thing and also the thing. That's that, I suppose. One very good, damn near excellent. The other pretty damn bad. What a shame. But yeah, the
Tragic.
thing. It's a John Carpenter's The Thing. Truly excellent movie. Highly, highly recommend it. Go rewatch it. Why not? If you haven't seen it in a while, it's good. We will be doing this same sort of general thing again next week. Not sure what day yet, but for my favorite horror movie, The Shining. Oh my god! And also that movie, Doctor Sleep.
Because
Boy, do
I've never seen Doctor Sleep, and I'm sure hoping that it's gonna be a movie. I'm sure hoping that it's
I
gonna
won't.
be a film.
I won't spoil it for you, but I'm just gonna leave it at that. It certainly is a film, and I'm curious what you make of Doctor Sleep. Mike Flanagan's attempt to simultaneously make Stephen King happy and fans of the Shining movie happy. We'll see how he did. We'll see if he could manage to split that baby in a satisfying way. Who knows? So that'll be fun. I'm excited to talk about The Shining because it's my favorite. It's one of my favorite films. Either that or Finding Nemo.
I am also a big fan of The Shining, so I am looking forward to the sequel because I always love to get more of the things I like.
Oh boy. Well, then you sure are in luck. I don't know if it's good luck or bad luck, but you're in luck.
Oh boy.
Um,
How Mike
I'm excited to talk
Flanagan-y?
about
How Mike
it.
Flanagan-y are we talking on a scale of 1 to Fall of the House of Usher?
I don't know what that scale means exactly, but here's what I'll say because I don't want to spoil it for you. I don't want to taint your opinion of the movie with my opinion of it. It is not his best work. I'll say that.
Okay, fair enough. All right, that is enough for me.
It is not the height of Mike Flanagan's achievements. My brain remembers you already talking about The Shining. Did I enter an alternate universe? Yes. Welcome back. You were in the universe where we already did that, but here in this universe we have not.
We did make a
bring it up.
preview video about Doctor Sleep early on in the channel's days.
Oh yes, we did. We did a trailer reaction to Doctor Sleep. We didn't end up reviewing the movie.
No.
I don't. Well, I think because you didn't see it.
I was not that.
So I'm excited to talk about it. I've never talked about this movie on the channel before, but I have many, many, many thoughts about it. So it'll be fun.
Well, I'm excited.
Welcome back to our universe. We're happy you're here. I do bring The Shining up all the time, so you might have just heard me talking about it at some other point. I could believe that. I can't stop talking about it. I won't. You cannot stop me. Well, Hugh, thanks for chatting about these two films. Do you have anything to add on the subject before we say goodbye to the fine people in the chat?
I love The Money Pit.
Well, there you go.
All right.
Thank you all for joining us. We hope that was a fun little chat about these two movie films. And we hope you'll join us next week as well. We might try to do maybe even one more before the end of the month. Who knows? I'm not really sure.
Give it a shot. Who knows? Who knows what we might have up there? Who knows what we might have up our sleeves?
Who knows? And then I can't make any promises because life comes at you fast. But Devs 4, I am working on it. I promise, and it's going to come out. And it's hopefully it'll blow your socks off because if it's a massive disappointment, that sure would suck. Thanks, JJ. We had a good time as well. Thanks for joining
Yes.
us. Thanks for chatting. Thanks for the super chats. We certainly appreciate those. I'm glad I finally realized that that's something you needed to enable on your channel, that it didn't just magically
Yes.
start when you got monetizable. I'm glad I finally learned that. I know.
we
I'm so great at this whole YouTube thing.
and
Thanks,
we
friend.
appreciate your your patience and your willingness to super chat us.
Yes. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your night, fine folks, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.